Good evening, everyone. I call the Development Review Board meeting of April 16th to order. At the Development Review Board, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of the zoning administrator's decisions. The Development Review Board operates on the record. Broadly, this means that we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties, and then issue a written decision with our findings. The applicants and members of the public should be aware that this is your opportunity to comment and provide evidence relating to the applications. In the event of an appeal of our decision to the Environmental Court, the Court will not take additional testimony, but will look at the evidence from our hearings here, the regulations, and determine if the evidence supports the Board's decision. So I encourage all of you to speak up now at this hearing. As we're on the record, we're going to ask that you affirm that your testimony will be truthful. So would the applicants and anyone wishing to speak to the application please stand and affirm the following. I hereby affirm that the evidence I give in the cause under consideration should be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, under the pains and penalties of perjury. I do. Thank you. Applicants should be aware that you require a majority vote of the full board to succeed. That is a vote of 4 out of 7. Tonight we are one member short, so anybody wishing a continuation can request that if you wish to have the full board hear your application. Okay, there's some administrative matters that we're going to deal with, and that's we have the minutes from the meeting of March 19th. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of March 19th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any corrections to these minutes? I wasn't at the meeting, so. Any corrections, changes? Dr. Child? No? That's the case. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Those against? 501. Thank you. At this point, Brian, I wish you to confirm that the meeting has been properly warned.
It has been.
Thank you. Does any member of the board have any conflicts of interest or ex-parte communications to advise us of?
I see that Bob Stevens is in the audience today. I suspect that Mr. Stevens will provide testimony to applications before the board. Bob and I are joint venturers in connection with the Brooks House renovation and restoration. I don't think that my professional relationship with Mr. Stevens will impair my ability to make an impartial decision on matters before the board, but I want to give notice to applicants and interested parties if they wish to interrogate me on that issue.
On an application-by-application basis, or now? Application-by-application?
Application-by-application.
Yeah, we'll do it application-by-application. Thank you. Any other members of the board have conflicts of interest or ex-parte communications? Thank you. I appoint Michael Goen to the alternate to hear all applications tonight. Okay, with that in mind, those administrative formalities undertaken, we'll open the public hearing. Call application 2011-261, Richard Carosona. If you have a moment, there's some technical matters that the board wishes to address in relation to your application. So we're going to do things in a slightly different order to that which we normally would. The board is in receipt of a number of documents from both the applicant and interested parties, and at this point I wish to determine whether the board deems that those documents are admissible into the record, and I'm going to ask Mr. Hertz to speak to the documents that he provided to the board and give us an indication as to why he deems those documents are admissible and what the relevance of those documents is.
Thank you.
Could you just come to the microphone if you wouldn't mind?
Michael Hertz. I'm representing Mr. Bowline and his neighbors in this project. I submitted two sets of documents. One relate to a small claims proceeding between Mr. Carasona and David Parker and Steve, I forget the last name, relating to a dispute over construction of some work that Mr. Carasona was hired to do. And the second set are some documents from a lawsuit involving Mr. Carasona, the Owners Association of a 5-unit condominium project that is his project, and property owners or unit owners by the name of Van Orman. Without going into the details, I think both these documents tend to show a lack of confidence on the part of Mr. Carasona to handle the type of project that's before us now. The condominium project is similar in size to what we're talking about here. I also have the Van Ormans here to add testimony to supplement written documents. And we think they go to show a lack of confidence to deal with a complicated matter, which is a complicated project like we have here. If you look at the latest plans, there's a high level of detail and sophistication in the drainage plans and so on. And we think they demonstrate a track record of an inability to handle this kind of project and to follow up on complaints, to deal with them in a timely and a competent manner. We think that's important here because we think it supports or should be considered by the board in its decision. We think it also would support, if the board does choose to grant the application, to include either a development agreement or some kind of escrow agreement to make sure that whatever his obligations are under the board's order, that he fulfills them.
I have one or two questions for you, and I'm sure other members of the board may do so also. What is the specific relevance of these documents to the subdivision application before us at this point? I mean, I hear you cite that they attest to an individual's ability to perform in a certain manner, but that's not relevant to this application. We're looking at the merits of a subdivision application.
I think the condominium project, for example, the details would show issues involving placement of a road or use of a road that goes across areas that were for the Van Ormans, in a failure to do the landscaping that was promised, a failure to build where there were problems with the house and flooding with the house, problems with the well, problems with the boundaries that had been originally promised to the the Van Ormans. I think it's a similar enough project, and this one before the board now is even has a lot more detail and complexity, and I think the testimony as well as the documents indicate that a lack of capability to deal with this and to handle this kind of project in a proper manner. I don't know. Bob,
Thank you.
Do you
Thank
have
you.
anything you want to add to that?
I'm just asking for a legal opinion as to the admissibility and relevance of these documents. I'm not looking for any further detail at this time with regard to design implementation or any of the technical aspects of the application.
I have
Does
just a
anyone
couple
know?
of questions.
Yeah.
Is either David Parker or Stephen Taylor here today to testify?
They were expected, but I spoke with Mr. Parker, and apparently he was unable to make it because of a sick child.
Okay. I think it's, in that case, on the Parker-Taylor documents, I think those are clearly hearsay. They're an out-of-court statement to be introduced in the record to prove the truth of the matter therein asserted. And we don't have the ability to interrogate, and really the applicant doesn't have the ability to interrogate Parker and Taylor. And I'll note that, as for the reliability of an out-of-court statement, a partisan statement made in a legal matter is not typically the type of document that would be relied upon as being is a admissible and credible statement of the undisputed facts. So I'd recommend that we not introduce any of the David Parker, Stephen Taylor documents, again, because regardless of their relevance, which they may not be relevant, they are hearsay unsupported by the testimony of the parties.
Do you have any, Craig, do you have any questions about the other document, the Orman document?
The other documents, the Van Orman documents, and I'm no litigator, but it's appeared to be documents introduced to show prior bad acts of the applicant. And under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, they're typically not they're typically not relevant, and they're not to be admitted into evidence except for certain exceptions. I want to make sure I understand. You didn't state that these documents were intended to impeach prior testimony of the applicant, and I would take the position that if the applicant has introduced prior testimony regarding other permits, that the board should disregard that testimony, because even the initial testimony is irrelevant to the task at hand, and that is determining conformance to of this project to the zoning ordinance in Brattleboro. And I don't believe that they're being introduced for impeachment of a prior testimony, and I haven't heard that they fit into one of the exceptions to the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, which we follow, which are effectively adopted by Vermont from the Vermont Rules of Civil Procedure regarding the introduction of testimony. What exception to the general rule that prior bad act testimony is not admissible are the parties relying upon?
I don't have a specific exception that I can point to. We think it just establishes a track record by this applicant that is relevant to the board's consideration. But I can't tell you that it fits within a specific exception of the bad act. I think the relevance goes beyond just bad acts. I think it's just a question of his capabilities, and it's properly complete this project and follow through with it appropriately.
Okay. We're not here actually to judge his capabilities. We're here to judge the merit of the subdivision application. I mean, he can hire professionals or contractors that are capable as any applicant can.
Wasn't the case in this other project, and we're very much concerned that we'll have similar problems in this one.
Okay. Further questions? Anyone, any other member of the board have questions for Mr. Hertz? Thank you very much. Do we vote on admissibility here?
I think that's your call.
Does any member of any member of the board have questions about the documents that the two documents that Mr. Hertz introduced or provided?
I didn't even see them. I didn't get a
You
copy.
didn't get a copy? I would like to take a vote on admissibility.
You know, I might recommend a slightly different course of action, and that is I think it's likely that we'll close this evidentiary hearing without a decision today. And we may want to take some limited testimony from the parties in the Orman matter and delay our decision regarding the admissibility and the relevance of those documents until we've had a chance to consult with counsel, and that would be Bob Fisher of Fisher and Fisher, the town's counsel, and then make a formal finding regarding the admissibility and relevance in our written decision, which will follow within 45 days of the closing of the evidence.
That's acceptable. Yes, please.
Would this agreement to follow that course itself preclude that we can complete this application this evening?
No.
No, I think we could vote tonight, but again, technically, we don't make our decision until we issue our written decision within 45 days. And considering the complexity of the application and this admissibility of this evidence, I think it would be wise to at least take in the evidence. I wouldn't recommend we take in the evidence that's clearly hearsay, but the other evidence that could be supported by the testimony of the Van Ormans, we'd accept that and then deliberate and decide whether we would consider it as being admitted and relevant.
Okay. We have.
Could I add just one?
Okay. Please step back to the microphone if you.
I just wanted to mention that the last document in this Van Orman group is an agreement that's signed by Mr. Carasona as well as the Van Orman. That may support its admission as a statement by the applicant.
Thank you. We're dealing with specific specific issues relating to documents that have been presented to the board. I'm not open generally to the public at this point for comment. No, you hold your question, if you don't mind. Mr. Carasona, you provided a document that I think was relating to the two documents that Mr. Hertz has been referring to. Sorry, this is a seller's property information report.
Disclosure, yeah.
And the relevance, if you could be very brief, the relevance of this document is, or the admissibility and relevance of this document is?
Well, it's signed under penalties of perjury that everything that they're selling is fine.
So,
In other words, I think it's probably being
One
produced
second.
to impeach the testimony, likely to impeach the testimony of the Ormans later. or the Van Ormans,
Okay.
rather, that the Van Ormans may make representations regarding the condition of the property that are inconsistent with the representations that they made in the different documents. So
We
it's
will-
introduced to impeach that testimony.
We will treat this document in the same way that we are treating the other two documents.
What other two documents do you have?
They're
We
the
have to-
ones we have in front of us.
No, we don't know that.
Yes, it is.
No, shh. What are the other two documents?
The other two documents we have are a Superior Court. I've just passed them down the end. There's a covering letter from Attorney Hertz here with two documents, one referring to a Superior Court judgment, a settlement, and one referring to a small claims court settlement.
With the guys from Newfane.
Sorry?
With the guys from Newfane.
With Parker.
Right.
Parker was one of them, and the other is Orman.
Okay, so in the first
I'm
document...
not. I'm not asking you to discuss those documents. Mr. Carasano, we were attempting to determine the relevance, the admissibility of those documents, and the relevance of those documents. Okay. Let us now move on to Mr. Carasano. If you'd like to tell us about the documents that you've submitted tonight in relation to the subdivision, the plans.
Okay, so we're going to skip
Do you
over
have?
Yes.
this part.
Yeah, I think it would
Move on
probably
to-
be better that
move on to
you present your application in chief, tell us what you propose, give the public an opportunity to comment and introduce testimony. We anticipate that some of that testimony will be from the Van Ormans regarding the previous project. If that testimony you feel is inconsistent with the evidentiary document that you have, then we ask that you discuss that document after their testimony. That's probably a good order.
Okay, so we're just going to start with business.
We'll start
Yes.
with
Now
your
we're going to
application.
regular business.
Regular, straight business.
Yes.
Okay,
You have your engineer here tonight.
yes, I do.
Would you?
And from the last meeting, the letter you gave us from Mr. Stevens and the town planner, I believe, with their questions of how we were going to address this, we have conscientiously, to the best of our ability, answered every question and addressed every issue. And I'm going to give up my microphone to Ron Bell, who has done most of the work. And I think he needs something to
Could you-
put his...
Could you cite yourself over here on this side, just so that you're visible to the BCTV camera? Thank you.
And Colin, I don't know Colin's last name.
Colin Lang, he works with me.
Want me to be your easel?
Colin, if you'd like to just
They're getting...
pull that chair forward. So
No, that's a screen.
the chair is a screen.
It's a screen, projector screen.
Oh, no, there's a chair down here. I think you wanted to sit down there.
So, since we were here last, we've revamped the project considerably. We've met with Gary King of the Public Works Department, walked the site, so some of the major improvements, this is sort of the master plan, but maybe we can see it better on a close-up drawing. One of the issues is that the road's quite steep as you approach the property. So what we've done to make the grades within, they're within 12% right now, I think about 12% at the steepest, is as soon as we come onto the property, we take a pretty hard turn along the contours. And there's about a 5-foot cut through here, and it softens all the slopes up to under 12%. And then it swings. Another issue was the access with emergency vehicles, and we swing into a very large roundabout that services all 4 driveways. So the access to the site is greatly improved. at the top, there's just a 2% cross slope that drains into the center of the cul-de-sac and retains stormwater. There's a super elevation on the main curve here, and that banking diverts stormwater into a stormwater detention pond. There's one main well that serves all 4 dwellings, and the sewer system connects up with a existing sewer line on the property to the north, the right-of-way to the north. Maybe we should go back to some of the, when we met with Gary King, his main concern was out on Old Guilford Road, is that there's really no ditch line out in here. So what we proposed, there is a cross drain now, not too far down. Took a little hunting to find it, but there is a cross drain. And so what we proposed is, and there's some major trees along the road here that he didn't want disturbed. So what we propose is a fairly shallow paved ditch line to handle the stormwater. So with the cul-de-sac up here and the stormwater detention pond, we actually have a little less stormwater coming off the site after construction than there is now. So we don't expect any increase in runoff. But we are making improvements to the ditch line along the access road and out into Old Guilford Road. Then up in the development, all the ditches that are cuts are stone lined and have check dams. So let's see. So there's some details for the asphalt ditch that'll be out on Old Guilford Road. The fourth sheet gives you the profile of the road, and it lists all the key elevations, the inverts, or the vertical curves and the horizontal curves. They're all on the plan. The road is 14 feet wide with, I think, 2-foot shoulders on each side.
Just for me, while you're on that page,
Yes.
the beginning of the road profile is the property line, or?
No, it starts about, I think, about 200 feet down.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is where we start the cut. And so that it's very shallow to begin with, but once we get onto the property, it's about a 5-foot cut up into here. And there's, I think, if you look at, there's probably 3 feet of a cut even before we get on the property. But this is the existing right-of-way, and we're able to maintain our ditch lines on the property. Without even making those cuts, we still maintain the ditch lines on the property. So there's quite a few sheets of just cross-sections, and they show the road at 50-foot intervals, and they show the basic original grade and the ditch lines, and you can see the super elevations from those.
Could you just before you, while we're still talking about road, what portion, about how many feet are we at 11%? It seems to come in at 4.5%. It ends up at 5.5 or 6%. What distance are we at?
The sort of the average grades are kind of noted. Once you come up to station 1050, which is here's 10, the whole cul-de-sac, then you know it's between 2 and 8%, and average is probably around 5. And below that, it looks like from 450 to I'd say to about 700, which is 700. Yeah, oh yeah, here's 700. So from 450, which is where we start the major improvements to the road, to 700, which is I'd say about maybe 70, 80 feet onto the lot. That's the 11%. So it's 700. So there's probably 300 to 400 feet of 11% road. And then it softens quite a bit. It goes down to around 8.5.
So is one of the curves at 11%?
Yes, Yeah. So it's a bit like being on a switchback. You do have to keep that, you do have to keep it going. If you try to level out the curves, you just lose it.
And to reduce the grade, reduce the percentage would just require further excavation?
Yes.
A deeper...
Yeah, deeper. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The problem with going, we played around with it quite a bit. The problem with going deeper is, if you go deeper here, the point that you can intercept the ditch line to run it into the stormwater pond keeps creeping up the hill. So we wanted to catch as much of this curve, which is banked, as we could to collect all that stormwater. And we tried to drop it down to get it down to like 10%, and we were midway into the curve before we could intercept that stormwater.
Okay.
So that seemed to be the best of both worlds. The nice thing is that although there's a curve there, you're in quite a cut. So as far as safety goes, it's not like a car is going to be careening down a hill in this around this curve, because you're in quite a cut there. So if someone lost control, they'd go into an embankment. So, let's see here. So probably we could show on the sewer line plan comes out pretty clear on this sheet also. So we pick it up from the two houses up above. They each come into a manhole, and then there's quite a long straight shot. From where the sewer line changes direction, there's another manhole, and it comes down to a third manhole, and then down to the existing sewer line, which is off the lot. And all the slopes there are well, they're fine. We have no problem with getting enough scour velocity in the pipe. And also, there's an existing utility pole down here, and this right-of-way will also be used to bring power up to the site. There'll be a transformer placed pretty close to where the power comes onto the property. And we have Bill Fitzgerald finished up his boundary survey of the property, and we have the easements, the water and sewer easements, and there's also an easement for Lot 1 to get water from Lot 2. So those three easements, the right-of-way for the road, the water easement, and the sewer and electric easement are all on a new survey by Bill Fitzgerald.
Can you introduce that into the record? Thank you.
Let's see here. If we go to cross sections, it takes up a bunch of the plans actually, and then we come to sheet 9, which is the plan and the profile of the sewer line. And it just shows, this plan shows the pitch, and it shows the locations and the elevations of the sewer line, the manhole rooms, and the inverts in each manhole. There's a detail for the manhole, and there's a detail for the trenching. There's a some specifications leakage testing of the sewer line, and also, I think on this plan we have some notes for the water line too, testing that, and disinfection of the water line. So pretty much all the utilities specifications are on the sheet here.
On that profile there, the lowest point is Guildford Street, or it's where you
No,
connect
it's,
to.
the end of an existing sewer line, which is.
That's a town sewer line, or that's a.
No, it's a. Bill,
Around
the plans
more
for
the
the.
sewer line extension from the Guildford Road up along the right away.
Yeah, so it's on this right away to the north of the property, and the existing line comes up to the land of Brownie Warden, I think is the name. And so there's not a manhole here now, but one will have to be placed right at the end of the line.
And that section of the line is in use right now?
Yes, and it's a 6-inch line.
Yeah, it was designed in anticipation that it didn't work.
The sheet, we went through, if you have more than an acre of disturbance, you need to address this sediment and erosion control. And the state has a kind of a checklist to go to see the severity of your site. And it's based on the erodibility of the soils and the slopes. And for this site, it's called a low-risk site. So what it means is you put a plan together, but the state doesn't actually get the plan, but you submit an application, and you in there you agree to follow the guidance in the state's yellow book, which is their construction guidance for their erosion and control guidance for construction. So what we've done is we've gone through that guidance book, and we've placed check dams. There's a stabilized entryway down here so that vehicles will minimize how much tracking of mud is brought off-site. There's some erosion control blankets. There's a seating specification. There's some sequencing and whatnot on the plan. So that should address all the concerns for the erosion control. So I think that's the basic plan.
Could you talk about stormwater in detail, a little more detail?
Yes. So the stormwater. Let me go back. No, I think it's the second one, yeah. Okay. So the site is now partially wooded, and there's some steep slopes to the north and also to the south. And it goes up pretty level off to the state's campground to the east. And so this area will be pretty much, the steep slopes will be pretty much left untouched. It really, it worked out well with this big turnaround, so that we have drainage from the driveways and these houses and the road all pitches into an infiltration area. So that greatly minimizes runoff from this whole upper half of the site. Now the lower half, we were able to pick up the ditch line. Again, the road's banked.
So you've got, in the center of, let's call it a rotary for a second, or a turnaround.
Yeah, turnaround, yeah.
In the center there you have a detention pond or an infiltration pond.
Yeah, infiltration.
And how deep is that?
Well, it's such a big area, we're not really calling it a pond. It's just an infiltration area. So, it'll flood a little bit during a storm and then dry out. So it's not. There's no outlet controls on that. It's just such a big area relative to the amount of infiltration going into.
So stormwater from the house or the structures to the south of that, and stormwater from the road will will
Uh,
pitch into the center of the rotary or center of the.
Well, no, not from these houses.
The top
we lose
houses.
a little bit, but yeah, from the upper houses and the driveways, it will get into that pond. Actually, mostly the driveways. We've assumed that the houses will be pretty much uncontrolled off to the side. This house will get picked up by this detention pond down here. This house will just kind of roll off, and there is a fair amount of uncontrolled stormwater, but we were able to balance it by storing some of the other stormwater at a greater rate, so that our net offsite discharge during a storm is less than the pre-development. So yeah, this drains into the cul-de-sac. This ditch line is banked, or this road is banked. It picks up all this stormwater, the stormwater from this house, and we were able to pick it up right around this area and get it into the stormwater detention pond, which then it goes into a level spreader and just sheet flows off into the woods to the south. So, yeah, from a stormwater perspective, it actually, everything works pretty well. We lose this part of the road from this ditch line here because it's a cut. There's nothing we can do about it. So we lose that, but we're really, right now it's kind of, a lot of it's going this way, and we're able to divert it into structures and detain it. So even though we lose this much, the balance is...
That section there that you lose is going to run in drains, ditches either side of the roadway?
Yeah, stone line ditches.
And then that runs on down through the right-of-way, ultimately to Guilford Street?
Yeah, well, once you get down into this area, it flattens out a lot, and we kind of went over it quite in detail with Gary King. It just tends to sheet flow to the south. And the only place where you really start to get a problem is closer out towards Old Guilford Road. And here there's a much-needed ditch line.
Where's south on here?
So south would
Take
be...
the arrow on the top.
To your left, yeah.
Let's see. South is...
Old Guilford Road.
yeah.
So sheet throw.
South is kind of this direction.
That's the other way.
This is,
Yeah, I think this arrow
That's
might be wrong.
this is north. Oh, wait, this is north.
Just look at this master sheet.
They're all showing the same arrow.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
How do you guys call this thing? The west, eastern,
For some reason, I think thinking of this as north, and that's the interstate kind of runs right through here.
Old Guilford Road's the north side of the property.
North side. Oh, okay. All right. So we'll be pretty much, things sheet flow to the...
If we take Bill Fitzgerald's survey, he has the arrow 180 degrees.
Well, no.
No?
Right down.
He's got northbound
Yeah.
river.
Turn it upside down.
Right.
That's north. See that? North. North.
South's Familari.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this plan's orientated the other way, but the direction's the
This
same.
is down here, this one.
So here's Old Guilford Road here, and here we have it here. This north arrow is this.
I have a question or two about the ownership, probably better directed to the applicant, but maybe I'll just wait until we have the engineering testimony done.
There were some notes from Gary King somewhere in our package relating to asphalt-lined ditches, not wishing to have asphalt-lined ditches. issues?
Preferring
Oh.
stone, preferring
Preferring
stone
stone.
rather than
Oh,
asphalt.
is that right? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't tell me that. Oh,
Well,
okay, yeah.
you can have a copy of.
Yeah, oh,
And there was some further notes about, which I think probably we were just beginning to address in your last comment, in terms of the fact that the ditches are, there's ditches in the higher section and there's ditches in the lower section, but the bit in between doesn't join together.
right, it sheet flows,
Is it sheet flowing in the direction that you wish to keep, to make
Yeah,
it
it's
flow, or is
kind
it
of
going to
all the-
sheet flow onto to the abutters' properties?
well, it's, yeah, it does, but it's kind of in a wooded area. There's, this area in here is all wooded, and it just sheet flows in that direction. So, but again, there won't be any additional runoff, you know, after construction than what's there now. So, there's no, you know, there are no erosion problems in this area. Only once you get right down into here is it gets to be a problem. And if you're on Old Guilford Road during a rainstorm, you can see it doesn't handle the road. There are some major mature trees in here, and that's why Gary was, when I met with him, he was, I don't really want to see a big ditch line going in there and ruining those trees. But so that's why we opted for the paved ditch line, which would be shallow.
Is the culvert under the road there of an appropriate
It's,
size?
Existing, yes.
Is it
Yeah.
an appropriate size, though, to deal
Yeah.
with it?
What is, do you recall what that culvert is?
I have
Yeah. Well, there, right now, the drainage crosses this lot here, and it just kind of disappears in this area. And what happens is it gets carried across by that cross drain.
Okay, can you just one more time? So the retention, we're taking this water from the higher portions of the road, putting it into a retention pond, which is that's what's detailed on sheet 9, is it? Some 4 feet deep.
Right. The plan shows the detention. Oh, well, this,
What's up there?
yeah. Yeah, right. So we, you can kind of follow along. The original grade at the bottom is like 618. Well, it's around probably 617. And the bottom of our pond is 615. So there's 618. I guess it's about 3 feet of cut, and then there's a bit of an embankment around it.
And the road itself is going to be gravel.
Correct.
Yeah.
Trying to get a sense of how steep 11 degrees is for a gravel road. Are there any gravel roads that are around 11 degrees in town that I might know of? Anything out in the out near maybe Gibson Road? How about the Gibson Road or some of
I
those?
don't know that road, but
Bonnievale, maybe Bonnievale?
Valleyvale. Oh yeah, well that's probably more than 10.
Parts of Ames Hill, maybe.
Yeah. It's not 10 degrees. It's 10%. 10%. So
10%.
10 feet and 100 feet. You know, and so 5 feet, 50. You know, I mean, so if you're trying to get a sense, probably if we were at the grade there and outside into the hall, you know, it'd be about eye level. So it's not. It's not a scary drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other, are there other 10
Yeah.
percent grades,
Well-
11, 12% grades in dirt roads in Brattleboro?
I was going to say, just for comparison's sake, are you familiar with Washington Street as you turn off a canal and go up?
Quite familiar with that. I live off that street.
What would, are you familiar with the
It's actually pretty steep.
I don't know, yeah.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know where it is, but,
I know you don't know, but there's a sense of
yeah. we should
relative
look,
steepness. What we're looking for is just a street that we
I
all
was kind
know.
of thinking that if, it's not, but,
How about Canal Street? Is it as steep as Canal Street as you got
Yeah.
that section?
right, yeah, probably,
Up to,
actually-
up to the hospital, you know that section you go
yeah,
up?
yeah, right. Well, probably be very similar to that.
Maybe here's another
Yeah.
way to look at it.
Yeah,
This room is what, about 40 feet?
right.
So imagine starting on the floor and going to a height of 4 feet on the other end.
Right.
There's your,
That's pretty accurate.
that's about 10%.
Yeah, right. I was
So-
going to say that, just around the corner as you go up, just past the library and up, which street is that? I was going to say that's probably at 10%. Yeah. Just
Grove
to turn
Street
into
would
Grove
be-
Street, go up to the
yeah.
police department. That's probably about 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. We put leach field, septic systems, even mounds on 20%. And those, you can tell. I mean, but 10% is fairly gradual. Like for a wheelchair accessible ramp, you can go up to, I think it's 5% without any railings or any, I think you can go up to about 5%. That's negotiable by a wheelchair.
I understand, it's not a wickedly steep.
No, it's not, yeah.
I have a question or two maybe for the applicant. I note that this is a subdivision, so clearly there could be separate ownerships of the two subdivided lots. And will there be separate ownership of the structures, and what would or are those going to be rental properties? I can't remember.
That's to be determined.
Okay. Because if it's to be determined, then there's quite a bit of complexity in having
I'm gonna
separate ownership, and then you'd have to have a unit owners association. And
That would happen,
common
like-
maintenance.
That would happen like what's in Chickaway Village in West Townsend. I'm looking to sell this place as a whole, as a compound for a family, multi-generation to occupy all four houses.
Okay.
That's how I'm going to market it.
Any other members of the board have other questions for the engineer?
I have a question. I was reading this disinfection of portable water lateral, and it brings up in this, I'll read it. After disinfection and final flushing, and prior to placing lines in service, the contractor shall take bacterial samples, take a minimum of one sample from the service to each mobile home site. I didn't know where the mobile home site was coming in on this, and it was,
Yeah, that's a mistake, yeah. Yeah, it
There'll be no
should
mobile
say,
homes.
condominium.
There'll be no mobile homes.
it's what's written down, so that's why I have to.
Scratch it out.
Yeah, it's a
It's
mistake.
cut and paste.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We may have questions for you as it goes on, but you can leave that there, yeah. Mr. and Mrs. Carasano, you have anything further to add before we open?
Not on the mathematics and the engineering project itself. I think it speaks for itself. I think Ron and Phil and Colin did a great job. Very thorough. I don't know how mobile got in there, but
It's a mistake.
it must have been Colin.
Blame the young guy.
Who is going to maintain the road?
The homeowners. The maintenance agreement on that road as it is right now is once you get to my property line, below, or north of the property line, going towards Old Gilbert Road, we're responsible for 28% of the maintenance.
28% or 20%?
28.
28?
And that comes with the deed. So we would share maintenance with Mr. Bowline, Mr. Burrows, Mr. Higley at 28%.
That's on the lower section,
On the, well, northern section.
northern section. Yep.
And then once you get on our property line, we'd be up to, and as I said before, my concept to market this property is for a multi-generational family to move in, buy all 4 houses, and have grandma and grandpa stay home, watch the kids while they go out and go to work. And it's actually, you know, you laugh. But,
Idyllic.
Excuse me?
Idyllic.
It is like.
Well, yeah, it's actually, it's old school, and it's coming back. That
Okay, thank you.
families are starting to try and live together again. So.
Does any member of the board have further questions for the applicant at this point? No.
I'm still a little concerned about the, if in fact you end up with 4 separate homeowners, which might occur, then they would each get a quarter of the 28% that they would have to
Exactly.
maintain.
That's not how I'm going to try and sell it, though, Doc. I'm going to try and sell it as one package. You come in, you give me $2 million, and I'll put you and all your family right up in there, gate it, surround it, and you can be secure to keep the terrorists out.
We'll see. We'll get to that point.
Would
Let's figure out how we're going to do this before we figure out how we're going to market it.
any member of the public wish to speak to this application? Mr. Stevens, please come up to the microphone. Mr. Stevens, may I ask, do you have any documents for us?
I do. I have a letter that I thought I would hand out when I'm done, but if you'd like, I can summarize it first and then leave it with you to follow up afterwards. That's okay?
As you wish.
You won't be able to read through it, so.
As you wish.
My name's Bob Stevens with Stevens & Associates, and I've been asked on behalf of the neighbors to review the technical merits of the application. And I think I'd like to thank the applicant and the engineers. They've addressed most of the concerns that we had identified in previous submissions. So, in our view, it's come a long way. We have a few, I think, issues that still remain, but it's just a handful. For the record, and again, I understand the application is for subdivision, so it may not be for the buildings as shown as they exist, but we wanted to be on record that we're not sure that the buildings as shown meet the definition as a two-family dwelling. So that, I think, remains from our previous comments. We didn't have access to the boundary plan. I see in Ron's testimony that they have a boundary plan now with easements, so he had noted that that was still missing. With respect to the grades, the roadway, the switchbacks make a lot of sense. I think there are some inherent constraints on slope as you're getting to this property where you're going fairly steep. But it's much improved by having the longer road access. It seems serviceable for emergency vehicles. I do think that that first curve is tough. I mean, 11% slope is not, in our opinion, excessively steep, except if it's going around a 50-foot radius curve. That's a little tight. They're not going to be able to get all of that out, but you get through that curve, and then it goes to an 8% slope before it gets to the next curve. And I think you could probably find some happy balance where the curve is a little lower slope and that 8% on the straight is a little steeper. So that would be my recommendation, to refine that a little bit and see what you can get to reduce the slope at the curve. It's going to be a little deeper cut. That's a recommendation. Again, I think it would improve that, but it's not the end of the world. As Ron had said, you're not going to drive into the neighbor's home with a steep embankment there. It just may be a little more serviceable if you could do that around the corner. The detention pond outlet is, again, I don't disagree with the location, the design. we would like to see or recommend that the discharge, rather than going to a level spreader, be directed to a drainage swale. You have drainage swales now. It's a channeled waterway. Inevitably, the level spreaders attempt to disperse a concentrated flow, and historically they're not very successful at that in their upgrading of one of the neighbors' houses. It does seem, the topography seems to indicate that it's going away from the house, but I think it would be a safer design to just use the detention pond as designed. It's designed and intended to mitigate the peak flow, and let that get discharged after the outlet structure into the ditch, and that will be sure that we don't have that an unintended consequence of a concentrated flow running down on the neighbor's property. The road ditch along the roadway, I did not see in the drawings. I think I would agree with the comments that Gary King had said, that typically once you've concentrated the flow in ditches, you need to direct that to some drainage way. I don't know the topography. There's nothing on the drawings that indicate that there's a drainage way out there at the end of those ditches. You have two ditches, concentrated flow, and then if that's going to spread out, it has the potential to spread out in a road, and it's going to be on somebody else's property when it does that. It's not contained within the right-of-way. It's not clear to me that you need two ditches. It seems like you could put a culvert across. You might be able to put a culvert across and get one ditch on one side of the road if you want to minimize the impact. But I would say that there needs to be, at this point, a concentrated ditch to some point where it is in a drainage way, which may be at the end of the road. I'm not sure. Ripraps in the drainage swales. Ron mentioned that they are stone lined. I didn't see that note on the plan, so it was a note on my review, just that we would recommend that they be stone lined. So if they are, that's fine. I wasn't able to find that indication. And the final comment is one that Mr. Herbst mentioned, and again, I'm not sure of the specifics of this. Your subdivision ordinance under final plat review does allow or recommend that you have the option of considering a development agreement or asking for a development agreement. The specifics of that, in our experience, are sort of worked out with the administration of the town afterwards. But we thought, given that, and this has nothing to do with the applicant or his other projects as much as that you have a fair amount of earthwork upgrading of other houses. And the development agreement not only ensures that things get completed if that's the case, but also ensures that you can button things up if for some reason the project doesn't continue. We've had other subdivisions in town where the roadway got in and the water line was in, and then the project went bankrupt and it sat open, and the town was able to take action on some security to go out, not to finish the job, but to just button it up and put erosion control measures in. And that's not uncommon when you have a road with a subdivision. So that's the extent of our comments. I've got a letter that outlines those. And again, I think, as I say, from the last time, most of my concerns have been addressed with these changes.
Thank you.
Comments are summarized at the back of the letter.
Mr. Waller.
Good evening. My name is Ed Bowler. My property abuts the project, and again, I'm here just to ask the board to make sure that myself and my neighbors are protected. Certainly, the design submitted seems much more thorough. I would ask that there be some conditions where there are inspections or something to show by an engineer to show that it's actually being built to the plan. And possibly, as I heard Mr. Stevens mention, a performance bond or something to guarantee the project gets finished or at least gets handled in the appropriate manner if something goes wrong, so that my property, my neighbor's properties are protected. It, again, seems like A lot of extensive work is going to occur there, right below it. So I'm very concerned what happens. You know, it'll affect not just the value of my property, but all the things that we've been concerned about for some time, with the water rundown. Just want to make sure it's done right, if the board agrees to approve it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public like to speak? The lady at the back, why don't you come forward?
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
And your name?
Emma Higley, and I am in a property that is right on Old Guilford Road where everything will end up, so to speak. I commend Mr. Carasona for giving some wonderful proposals. I am still a little nervous and apprehensive about the project. The thing I want to stress is that we were here, I think, 2 months ago, and we were talking about a duplex. Now we're talking about 4 homes again. Things keep changing, as I pointed out before. So again, that makes me a little apprehensive. I'm trying to. I'm a little worried about, and this is all hearsay, so I'm not going to say anything really bad, but I hear that something was proposed in previous projects and wasn't followed through on. And this is my home, and I certainly don't want to stop them from being able to put a reasonable amount on the property. It's their property, that's good. But I want some assurance that if this is approved as proposed, it is followed as proposed, not shortcuts that later on down the road, Mr. Bowline and Pat and myself and my husband have to pay for and have to live with. I think there has to be some safeguards for the abutting property owners and also for the town of Brattleboro, because as evidenced by that, and that's all great to me, but it looks like some of it's just coming helter-skelter right down in front of my house, right down to Old Guilford Road. So where's that water going? There's no ditch down there. There's no culvert. Is the town of Brattleboro going to pick up that expense and put something in? It's just things to think about. I'm losing my train of thought, and I'm trying to be nice. I'm apprehensive. And again, they have a right to build. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. I do not ever see 4 people buying 4 homes as part of a family for $2 million up in that armpit of Brattleboro. Okay, I love my neighborhood, but it's not worth $2 million. Okay, it's a nice thought, guys, but it's not going to happen. The other thing, I live there.
Shush, please, just.
So the other thing is, you talk about this sharing of expenses for the road. Yes, there is an agreement in place, but I have yet to see it come through. And myself and my husband are not part of that agreement, as Mr. Carasona indicated. It's just for Bowline and up for that maintenance of the property, because everybody comes through my land to get out. So why would I pay money for them to get out? Doesn't make sense, does it? We have put monies into the road for years. We have plowed. We have done everything, and he has owned it for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years. Not a penny has come to any of us to help with maintenance or the snow removal or anything of that nature. So there also has to be something to assure that, gosh forbid he gets 4 houses up there, which is going to increase the burden on the right-of-way in front of my home and the traffic in front of my home. I mean, think about the number of cars that are going to be up and down. It's a little bit excessive on a little dirt road. So those are all things to think about. They're little, but they add up.
Can I just ask for you to clarify for me? You own the property that is directly on Old Guilford Road, at the bottom of the right-of-way or the access up to the property that we're discussing.
My property is from Old Guilford Road up to Mr. Boline's property. It's that little tiny wedge of property.
Okay.
On the west side of Fort Dummer Heights, northwest side.
Okay.
Just, I just want to know, if we give him this, and as well we should give him, obviously, he should be able to build up there, obviously. It's to be determined how much or how to do so. If this goes ahead, what are the assurances to all of us that it is going to be followed? Who is financially responsible if he doesn't? How do we recoup, how do we recover if he fails to follow the plans and we suffer later? Does the burden of liability fall on the town of Brattleboro, or does it fall on the property owners? Good question.
Your access, your driveway comes off the right-of-way, or does it come directly off Old Guilford Road?
It comes off the right-of-way, sir. And the other thing I just like to ask, and this is again, is once we get going, and maybe it's moot for this particular meeting, but what happens when they are doing all this construction and they have all this equipment on my property? Where do they put it? On my yard while they're working on the right-of-way? Where does it go? What are the safeguards for my property, Mr. Boline's property, the borough's property, when all this is happening? Because there's a tiny little right-of-way, but then it's our land. Does all the equipment go on our land? And I mean, and as I said, it might be moved for this meeting, okay? But it's something to think of that I worry about, and I don't want to make it difficult for Mr. Carasona and his wife once they do get the go-ahead on all this. But I'm just thinking ahead, what problems are going to occur, and how do we avoid them?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to this application? Please come forward.
Yeah, I'm Chris Higley. I'm Emma's husband. Live down at the bottom of Fort Dummer Heights. Two things that come to my mind. One, in the previous meetings and all the different plans that we've gone through, I remember one of the first ones, he had maybe 9 units up there, some, for people to live in. And there was a concern for the common land and how much of that land, I mean, for technical stuff for you guys to think about, does that meet the criteria for common land in there? And just as a personal thing, it's just, to me, it's too much for that land and the slopes and all the stuff we've gone through and all the rejections in the past to, it's too many houses up there for the land, in my opinion, because of all the other reasons that the people have given. And the other thing was, I had a question on the drainage swales that you said went off to the side, and I know Bob addressed something about it, but it seems like they're going to I believe it's the south side of Fort Dummer Heights, which is where that's all dumping out there. And forgetting what he said about maybe that's not the best system for there, maybe it would fail or whatever, but dumping it in that area seems like a really bad idea to me too, because the Burroughs' house is right on that, so we're on that side of the road, and there's in that whole section of the hill which doesn't show on that map, comes into play there, so it all kind of comes down through our property in another way also. So I'm afraid that adding, I guess whenever you disturb the natural flow or whatever the things are now, I'm afraid that that's going to be a mess.
We have a statement from the engineer that there will be no net increase in the storm water flow off that land as it currently exists. So that's the reason that they put some degree of engineering in here to manage those flows and slow it down so it doesn't just run off, sheet off.
I'm not an engineer. I can't speak to that. Just to my concern and to common sense of the way that I see that the water's running there now, and that's where they're redirecting it. Maybe the total volume runoff of the hill is going to be managed in a way, but they're putting it in a certain spot where it hasn't been before. So, maybe somebody could answer that knows more about it than me, but just something that I'm concerned about.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I say something?
No,
I think so.
not yet. Anybody else, any other member of the public wish to speak to this application? Mr. Hertz, please.
I'd like to ask Mr. Van Orman to testify, but I just had a couple things I wanted to say before that. The right-of-way is 30 feet in width as it comes up through this project, and I couldn't tell from the design if that's what the engineers are using as the width. It is, yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like to ask Mrs. Van Orman to testify. I'm not sure to what extent the board will allow this. And I'd also like to be able to direct her testimony as we go along with her questions.
Will we be able to rebut?
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is June Van Orman.
Can you just bring them, there we go.
My name is June Van Orman, and we bought unit number 2. We were the first ones in the condominium there. And we were there for a year before anyone else bought. Sanders there bought number 1. Frank Wilkins here is renting number 3. What we bought, we didn't get. So their concerns are very valid. We had 49 people trying 55 land, 10 on each side, okay? Now, when we first moved in, Carasona here would go over our septic tank with his bobcat, with his big lawnmower. We told him, please stop, it would break the septic system. He said, call your insurance company. That was his attitude. Yes, we have this, it's a fee simple. We have the insurance and everything for it. But he was telling our real estate agent, we're trying to sell it so we can get out of there. Because, we can't stand living. He lives across the road. Someone asked about where he's going to put all the equipment. He told us it would be 4 acres. It's 2.9 acres. A lot of it is the flood area. We knew about that. The top part is a very small area with these 5 homes. Well, 2 are still to come. He can't put them on yet. And yes, he was driving the heavy vehicles right 2 or 3 feet away from our septic tank. That was another concern of ours. And he wants to try and take back what we paid for. And part of it, something we paid for was the perimeter drains. We never got that. And it was something else we paid for we didn't get.
Did you have a problem with flooding?
Yes, our crawl space flooded because we didn't have anything there. No drains, nothing. We had to get Matthew Beck coming and, make sure that and all he put in were curtain drains. And Matthew Beck was, he just oversaw it. He didn't say anything, because he said if anyone said anything, he'd just walk off the place. And we've had a lot of problems with him. He stirs up trouble, and he seems to enjoy that.
No, just if you could keep your testimony to the matter at hand. I don't want any personal comments or any judgment
Sorry about that. Okay.
of the applicant.
We're having problems with the well now. the water. It's dark, it's brown, and someone over there keeps running her sprinkler constantly. We've lost water 3 times, one for 8 hours, another time 12 hours, another time 18 hours. He never bothered to help with, hey, could you guys like some drinking water or, anything in the meantime? He never said anything. So we had to go to Grace Hospital and get water. I have letters from Grace Hospital affirming this. And
What about the landscape? Any issues there?
well, that was a joke. I mean, it's all weeds. I've got pictures that I can show you if you want to see them. And anyway, when we got the, we had to go to, well, we got this, like I said, 49 feet in the front, 55 back and all that. Well, he wouldn't believe that, even though we paid for it, it's in the deed and all that. So we had, my lawyer, Tom French, we had to go to, mediation to get it. That's when you've got that Superior Court thing from Judge Wesley and signed by his lawyer and our lawyer. And he's still, and so we put rocks around at the front. Because you don't put something, he's going to go over it again. That's the type he is. And this is what's been happening. So anyway.
Thank you very much.
Condominium project, is it not?
Yes, yes.
And were you being billed by the condominium association?
Well, for a long time we were billed by him. And we refused to pay him, so we paid the condominium. And he didn't like that. He threatened us. They threatened us, with suing and court and everything.
If you, Mr. Hertz, as you are directing Miss Orman, June Orman, if you could keep her. Sorry, did I get your name wrong? Van Orman. If you, we will not entertain anything of a personal nature that relates to the applicant or the application that the applicant and the application that's before us.
And at some point, did you begin to pay assessments to the association?
Well, we always have, yes. At the mediation, they were told that they had to get a bank account. And so for the last 18 months, we have been paying it to Sugar Maple Village.
I think that's all the questions.
Thank you very much. Would any other member of the public wish to speak to this application?
I have
Mr.
two other members of the association that are here in the audience that live, are neighbors of the Van Ormans and live under the same conditions they do. So if they want to get up and address it.
We also have 2 people, aside from one in the association, who we've built the houses for. I mean, we can keep going if you want.
No.
From the testimony that I've heard from Ms. Van Orman, I intend to think that that testimony is likely not going to be admissible before the board. It does not seem to me to be relevant to our decision at hand, and I'd ask the chair to ask the applicant to show a great deal of reserve and discretion and limit or forego any additional testimony on those personal issues or prior development issues.
Thank you.
There was actually a couple of questions raised, again relating to the stormwater. I just wonder if you could address the comments that were made about, if the detention pond runs into a swale instead of over a spreader, and the water is running off in what direction? What direction would that be?
Well, I guess northerly towards the road.
And the slope, not shown on this survey here, running over to the, I guess it would be to the west, runs, you know, I mean, I guess ultimately, do you see that any water running out of the detention system flowing down or flooding down into the lands of Barline or
Well, as far as you can see, even without leaves on the trees, it's all woodland, pretty much as far as you can see to the west. I didn't go onto the property to the west, but all you can see 400 or 500 feet of woods that it would sheet flow onto.
Okay, and then
The water tends to flow to the northwest too, so it's generally going off into the woods rather than down the hill.
okay, and then there was a couple of comments. One was relating to a culvert under Guildford Road. You've seen that culvert? I mean, it exists.
Yeah, oh, it does. Yeah, Gary
Okay.
King put paint on it.
Okay.
He sprayed it. So one thing, I mean, it's no problem to continue the ditch lines down all the way down. That would be a small additional amount of work to do. If that would allay some fears about stormwater, it's not a problem to continue the ditch line all the way to Old Guildford Road.
I think that would be prudent. As Mrs. Stevens mentioned, once you've concentrated the flow, then you need to direct it all the way to its ultimate destination.
Are there driveways that cross that ditch line?
Yes, two to the west and one to the east.
They would require a culvert?
There's a small culvert. The bowl lines may need to be upgraded if we were to, say, if we put a cross drain and brought it all down on one side.
Maybe you bring it all down on the east.
If we brought it all up, we would probably need to upgrade the size of this culvert. I think it's like an 8-inch culvert.
Okay. Does any other member of the board have questions of the applicant?
So we should have a motion to close the evidentiary hearing.
Yeah. I'm looking for a motion to close the evidentiary hearing.
So moved. Second.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? I abstain. Thank you very much.
There's no vote on.
There's no vote. We will. Excuse me. We will consider the evidence that's been brought before us. We'll consider documents that have just been submitted by Mr. Stevens and others, and we will issue a written decision within 45 days.
Very good.
All right. Thank you very much.
They said that at the beginning, there was no vote.
Okay.
Hold on.
That's good.
Okay, so let's go ahead and make our way out of the
Yep. Everybody's has been that way so far.
Hey, we're even
Huh? No, this one's the fifth time he's been here. Oh, yeah. I guess it was changed. Yeah. Went from 9 to 4
Good job, boy.
to 2.
Cool. Thank you very much. I call application 2012-002, Craig Anderson. If you could come forward, thank you. Would you, Timberley, would you mind just pulling the door to a little bit? Thank you. Please tell us about your project.
My name is Craig Anderson. I am the owner of the Anderson Chiropractic Office. We're at 316 Western Avenue, and we're requesting a piece of asphalt 18 feet by 48 feet. It'll be primarily for parking for my employees. We presently have a parking area of 7 parking spaces that my clients use, and we're parking employees on the grass behind it right now for the last 1.5 to 2 years roughly. So what it does is it beats the dickens out of the lawn, and so we're requesting one, permission to put down the asphalt, and also permission, because of the mixed zoning, for permission to put parking there. Want me to go into the details?
Sure.
In the engineering study, do you want to see the whole thing, or you all have copies, I believe, right?
Unless you have new documents with you, then we have copies.
Okay. I just got what Stevens and Associates has done. Basically, they did a basic evaluation of the property and survey, checked out all the property lines and so on. They checked for runoff of water and recommended that because there's water coming across our parking area from the next door area, which is 6 feet above, that they put in a detention pond behind the requested piece of asphalt, 4 inches deep, in order to collect any water in case there's major runoff. Also, the zoning requirement has requested that we put 5 bushes at the end of the pavement to block it from the adjoining property. A recommendation of our engineer is 4 arborvitae. One issue is that the property next door is 6 feet higher. So I don't know if the arborvitae is going to do a whole lot because it's 6 feet higher looking over the arborvitae, but that's what the zoning says, and so they put that into the plan.
I have a couple of technical questions for you.
Sure.
Were you in the room at the outset of the hearing?
I was.
You were. So you took the oath, or the affirmation. You did. Okay. The second thing is you presented a document that is drawn up by Stevens and Associates.
Correct.
As cited at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Craig Miskovich here has a relationship with Bob Stevens, and
I have no problem with that.
you have the
That's the question
opportunity
you're
to, yeah, if you have a problem with that, he's happy to recuse himself.
Not a problem.
Thank you. So looking at this plan here, the new parking that's going in the back, it would go in the back here.
Correct.
Is it it's like a double parking? So you
Basically, my staff comes in first. So right now we have 4 staff cars that would park there right now. They were there this morning. We have to the left there a beautiful flowering Japanese crab tree, so I'm trying to not destroy that. And so that's why we're only requesting 5 parking. The original request was for 5. They've got 6 on the plan here because I wanted 5 9-foot wide. And what they're recommending here, what they're asking is to go to a handicap place. And so to replace that, they've asked for 6, just to bring us back to where we were. But frankly, from a practical standpoint, 8 feet wide is not very wide. Our present parking area is 7 parking spots, 9 feet wide. So my guess is we'd probably have 5 parking spots, 9 feet wide, that primarily would be used for staff parking. So the staff comes in first, and then clients come in thereafter. So it's not like they have to have access, and then the staff leaves after all the clients have left. So it's not an issue of staff leaving during the time of while clients are there.
could you just confirm that this plan is showing 6 at 8 feet, and you're saying that you actually would do 5 at
The request
5
that I
at
went to
9.
the engineer was I wanted 5. That's what 5 times 9 was going to be 45, but we want a little bit wider, so at 48 feet. And then when they got through coming up with the plan, they said we better go for 6 because we're taking away 1 from the 7 that you already have to make that a handicap parking. But between you and me, practically speaking, unless you get little tiny cars, 8 feet is pretty narrow.
Okay. How many vehicles do you actually have there? Commonly have there on a normal daily basis?
I figured out the other day we probably have 75 one-way trips per day.
Not the transit, but the number that actually park
At a given
at a given time. So you've got 3 staff or 4 staff, and then
I
you
got
have
4 staff, and like I said this morning, you had 4 staff cars plus me. So you had 5, including me.
Okay.
And then how many patients at any one time? How many patients at any one time?
We have both a dieting clinic and a chiropractic clinic, so you might probably have 10 people through an hour.
Yeah. And so you think that not only would you use these in the future, but this is your parking pattern currently?
We've done this for 2 years, and we've had no problem.
Okay.
So as far as the staff parking back there. I've also talked to Paul Normando, who owns the adjoining property, and he has no problem with it.
And is there any on-street parking in this area? I don't...
Some people park across the street on Allerton Avenue. Occasionally get somebody who goes down the street and parks on Western Avenue. You're right at the intersection of 91, so there's not really too much you can park in front of my building.
Okay.
The road stripe there is only about 2.5 feet off the sidewalk.
Thank you.
My question is, would this possibly be a prime area to try the pervious asphalt type instead of the impervious?
Well, I think Bob may have addressed that issue with the detention pond as the way to deal with that. I don't know that the pervious has the same lifespan as the impervious, but
question, is this a small business?
It's a business. Small business?
Well, I just wonder how many employees are actually permitted in a residential small business.
well, I think on this side of the road, I'm not sure, this isn't a residential district, is it?
No, the parcel is, the rear part of the parcel is in the residential district, but the front of the parcel is in the multiple residential district. Office use is a permitted use in that district.
So there's no limits on numbers of employees?
No, there are no limits.
One of the things that this board doesn't like doing particularly is blacktopping things and paving, providing parking spaces and paving where parking spaces and paving isn't necessary. The zoning ordinances, in some cases, require that so many parking spaces are provided, based on some arithmetic calculation to do with square foot or type of business and so on and so forth. Generally, we like to try and reduce that if we can. In your application here, this application here, you're going the other way, requesting more spaces than would be calculated formulaically from the zoning codes.
Yes.
And for us to allow that, we would have to have some justification of why you need the extra spaces. And I've sort of heard part of it, but I'm not sure I've got the numbers straight in my head. So you have 3 staff plus yourself is 4 cars.
4 plus myself is 5.
Okay, 5 cars. And those 5 would be put on this area that you're requesting to be
They're
paved at
already
this
parking
point.
there now. They parked there for approaching 2 years.
And then the 3-bay garage is used by who?
We have 3 apartments in the building, so the 3-bay
So they
garage
have-
is used by them.
Okay. And then you have up to, you say 10 clients or customers parking at any given time?
Per hour.
Per hour?
They might be there for 10 or 15 minutes and then leave.
I'm just trying to get a feel for how many, what kind of a parking lot it is at the back there. If I was to arrive at visit at 11 o'clock and I would go around the back, would I find a parking space?
The turnover is pretty quick, so
So you're going to have how many client parking spaces now?
7.
7.
So it's 5 staff, 3 for the apartments and the garages, and 7 in addition.
My engineer did a calculation for the parking and said that based on all the zoning requirements and such, it would be 11 parking spots for the existing without adding anything, and we only have 10, the 3 in the garage and 7, because we didn't have a handicap parking. So we would be adding that to come into compliance on that.
Any Any other member of the board have further questions for the applicant? Any members of the public wish to speak to this application?
John McPherson, I live at 200 Western Avenue. And my question would be, is the parking for the multi-residential zone in the multi-residential zone?
In this application?
Yeah.
It's actually in the residential zone, but when you have a parcel
30
with
feet.
2 districts,
Yeah.
that's allowable.
Just to address that question, when we have lots that are across 2 zones, the zoning of one zone or the other can be stretched by, I think it's 30 feet, is it? 30 feet. So in this instance, the criteria that govern the Western Avenue portion or the mixed residential would stretch it, could be pushed another 30 feet further back. I'm not sure where the line is, but I'm going to assume that probably takes you significantly back in the lot. Do you know where the line is? I mean,
Yeah, but parking for commercial use can be in the residential district if particular care is taken to screen that parking from surrounding residential uses.
And the back of this property drops precipitously back to the Lesney property.
Yes, I believe it does.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. I mean, it looks like it drops,
It's a steep bank.
40 feet, in the back.
It's a steep bank.
Yeah. So the lights won't shine on any residences in the back.
Not at all.
Okay.
okay. Any further questions from anybody?
Somebody had a question before about the impervious coverage. My engineer said the maximum impervious coverage under zoning can be 55% of your entire lot. The new parking would increase the coverage to approximately 27%, which meets zoning code.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to approve application 2012-002.
So moved.
Second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? I abstain. 501. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I call application 2012-013, Thomas Houdon. Please come forward. Thank you.
So were you here? You were not here last time.
I wasn't.
Let me give you the Cliff Notes version of our last meeting. We dealt with really everything but site plan at the last meeting, and we approved the request for a change of use, and we determined that converting from the auto repair garage to a hair salon was in fact a conversion of one non-conforming use to another non-conforming use, but the subsequent non-conforming use was less intense. And it is a non-conforming use that is at issue, not a non-conforming building. The structures are conforming, so we will have dealt with the conforming, non-conforming nature of the property, and we asked the applicant to come back and give us more detail on the site plan. The applicant had proposed a few variations of a plan. We gave some preliminary indication on what site plans we thought worked best, including the number of curb cuts and their location, and then asked the applicant to come back with more detail, and the applicant has apparently done that.
Ready?
Yes, please tell us about your application.
Michelle Hudon, speaking for Thomas. And what you have in front of you, the big picture that looks like the site plan, that's revised. If you look at the previous plan, we deleted 2 of the 3 curb cuts, so we maintained the curb cut in the center of the property line. The first plan, the property currently stands, is from your right-hand side of your page, was all pavement across the front of the building to the very edge of the property line, and then back to the edge of the building. We heard that you would prefer that the property not have parking in the front where it currently had in the existing lot. So we propose to remove all the blacktop basically in front of the building to the right-hand side of the page and replace that with grass, with a sidewalk that goes onto the paved area. We included one handicap parking space per your request. We grassed the entire border of the property line. We were not able to use angled parking because it would have made egress and getting in and out just impossible. People would be like running into each other. You asked for a sign. We located a ground sign in the front right of your paper. 12-foot setback, 6 feet tall, mounted on a dirt mound that was covered with mulch and flowers surrounded by stone. We showed you the ways that the traffic would go in and out, and then so you'd have a better idea of what the building looked like. Your second page is kind of you're standing on Western Ave facing the building, so you see that on the right of the building, there's a big window that basically was the garage door. So it's more aesthetically pleasing, more into the residential kind of, doesn't look like a glaring business. The door is replaced and then a window. And we were proposing a sign wall mounted on the wall 6 feet in the area square, which would probably right now, as this diagram depicts, be 1 foot by 6 foot. The south-facing elevation was 16 feet 2 inches, and the north-facing elevation is 16.2. Those numbers were given to you per your request. Questions?
How many parking spaces do you have here?
10.
10.
Yes, sir.
And there is on-street parking here, right? Western Avenue, there's on-street
Yes.
in front of it?
We did not increase the number of parking spaces as originally had been proposed. We kept them down to 10, which was what was originally there.
Is there any ability to, the drive going off and I think the board much appreciates one curb cut on this property, not 3. And the curb cut is 30 feet wide. We've had some recommendations from the planning department that shrinking that curb cut might be visually appealing, might make that curb cut more consistent with the curb cuts along that part of Western Avenue. And even if the curb cut doesn't get any smaller, is there any ability to bring the parking in from the western side a little bit so that you've saved some more grass on the far western side of the property and still have a safe circulation on the property?
So you're saying the parking spaces that are on the left of the paper, which would be the western side, to remove those and put those back?
No, just move them to the left. It's kind of to the right, rather. Bring them to the east. So
Move them towards the building more?
yeah, and so because there seems to be a lot of room there just to wander around, and again, the recommendation from the planning department is that that aisle could be as small as 24 feet, and right now that aisle is probably 55 feet.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you got 40 feet here,
Yeah.
so you can do anything you want.
Yes, we are agreeable to that.
Okay. And then also, I think the other recommendation, and this is consistent with the current zoning ordinance, is that that in that zoning district, the setback for the first parking spot is 25 feet, and I think that handicap spot clearly is, and maybe even one of the others is within 25 feet of the setback. So is there a possibility to either reduce the number of parking spots to 8 or 9, or maybe pop one more in the back, just to bring all the parking spaces at least 25 feet from the curb?
Yeah, you need to move it that way. Take it out and put one over here.
Move it to the back, but we're trying to eliminate the impact to the neighbors in the rear.
Yeah. How about just going down to 9 spaces? Could you drop one space?
You could do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And that gets you probably close then to 25 feet, right?
Yeah.
These are 5-foot grids? 5 feet on the grid?
5 feet blocks on that picture
1,
there.
2, 3, 4. Yeah, so if you bring the handicap
Yeah.
parking stripe to the north is 25 feet back. So
Yep.
if we could get rid of that space, that'd be good, and make the first space a handicap space.
Yep.
Okay. I think that addresses a lot of the parking concerns that the planning department had raised.
Okay.
Why do you need so much pavement to the east of your back parking?
Because we have a dumpster back there, and you can't have the cars running into the enclosure around the dumpster, and the vehicle that picks up the dumpster needs to be able to back in a little bit. So it only goes to probably almost, 18.5 feet into the building is pavement, and then the 15.5 backside of the feet of the building is grass.
You talk about lighting and landscaping a little bit. Lighting. You're going to have lighting for your signs?
Yeah, there'll be some lighting for the sign,
Yep.
and there'll be probably some lighting that's already pre-existing there for the station, which is LED lights. And that'll be turned facing this parking lot. All the light comes straight down.
LED lights,
Yep.
they just go straight down.
Okay.
The one to the east, which is standing, is coming down.
There's a standing pole there, is there?
Yeah.
Okay. So lighting will be on the structure, on the building only? Is that what you're saying?
No, there's a pole here at the entrance of the west side of that curb cut.
And that will remain?
That'll remain.
And that lights the parking lot?
Yeah, that lights the parking lot.
Okay. And that's, I don't recall how that looks, but that's downlighting too, right?
Yeah.
It's a
they're
square box.
Like that big. They've got like 100 little bulbs in them.
Okay.
And they're the state-of-the-art stuff. State of Vermont put them in on that energy.
Energy Vermont?
Yeah.
And Efficiency Vermont?
Efficiency Vermont, right? They're excellent.
So is that pole still going to work all right if the grass is moved back further?
Yeah, because it's on the corner of that western curb cut.
Okay.
Brian, there's a request that there be a installation of a Knox box for use by the Brattleboro Fire Department. What do they need a Knox box for? Is there a gate here that they can? Or is it
No,
for
it'll allow
access
them-
to the building?
Yes, access to the building on an emergency basis.
Oh, really? Is that because of its location, or is that a standard request now for
I believe it's a
commercial?
standard request for commercial buildings.
Okay, interesting.
It's a key that the fire department has a key to, and then they can receive the key out. We have one of those on the Vernon site, so we're familiar with those.
Yeah, I imagine as a
Has a key, has your key inside it, the fire department has a key.
yeah,
to
they have
get
a
into
master
that.
key, and yeah, I hadn't seen that request for just general commercial buildings. I would have expected it if it had a gate, or if there was being operated as a gas station. But okay,
I think most commercial buildings do have them.
Yeah.
And I think
That's a good idea.
That's required them outside of the context of these improvements.
okay.
So,
It's a good idea.
it's not shown on this plan, but you may be thinking about it. Do you have any plan for, I mean, we've got grass going in the front now.
I figured that you guys in your infinite wisdom would have some requests as to what you might like.
Some form of landscaping or vegetation along the end there, partly to shield the parking lot.
On the western side?
On the western side,
Yep.
yes.
Do you have a preference?
Him.
All right. Take it under due consideration, sir.
With Mr. Fisher.
60-foot maples. No.
Yeah.
So something to shield the parking.
Well, yeah, just if you could landscape again, landscape it in so that it is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood.
Yep.
You know, take a ride down and, you know, look on both sides of the street, and there's a number of trees. Some of them may be maples, some of them may be crabapple, some of them may be, you know, whatever. And we've also got rhododendrons, low bushes and that type of thing. Forsythia, a lot of forsythia.
Yeah.
You'd have to set them back from the...
Set them back from the sidewalk.
Right.
You've got a 25-foot
Yep.
grass strip that's going in there, just to put something in there that
Yep.
Well, that grass strip is going to be higher to match all the landscaping around. So that water's not going to be coming out through there.
Yeah.
It's going to
Be
be
mounded.
There's a rise, a natural rise, and whenever they cut that right away in, they took it right out. They're going to put that back in, and that'll be the greenery area.
Yeah.
which-
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think if you look at most of Western Avenue in terms of the type of how those properties are, number one, there's no parking in the setback. It's always behind the building or some way back, maybe with the exception of the Lutheran Church, but perhaps we have to let them off. But even there, they've got, you know, bushes and shrubs and flowers out front, so it's keeping the character of a sort of residential
And the
neighborhood.
business, too.
Yeah.
Both are very well
Yeah.
in the business.
And your ground sign that you're proposing going in here where the dot is, that'll have lights too? That'll be downlit or
The
whatever?
ground sign, yes.
Yeah. So there's a single light or two lights shining down?
Two lights opposite. Yeah.
Okay. We normally ask businesses to turn off their sign lights when they're not in operation, so they're not glaring all night, but... Okay. Any other comments from members of the board? Any member of the public like to speak to this application? John.
John first again. I just wanted to ask for clarification on signs. There's a ground sign, how many square feet?
6, I believe,
And then there's a wall sign?
of 6 square feet as well.
So there won't be any signs in the windows or elsewhere on the property? Just those two signs, right? That's a sign ordinance?
We govern external signs. What somebody puts in the window... Sorry, go on.
They can have window signs of up to 30% of the area of 2 windows.
Oh, is that new?
No.
Just unknown?
Hidden. So the external signs are 6 feet and 6 feet. I would imagine they might have an open sign or something, I don't know, inside the window, but...
And to your question about lighting being shut off at night, what about the lights in the store? Is that a... In other words, if you turn out the outside lights, but the lights in the store are shining out on the street, kind of defeat your purpose.
Well, our concern are the light that washes off-site.
That's my concern, too.
Imagine there'll be some security lighting and safety lighting on, but does the applicant need to keep the store well lit at night?
It is right now.
It's on now.
It's on right now.
That may be Mr. McPherson's point.
You know, I just actually talked to Tommy tonight and said, hey, your lights are on up there. I don't know if you know it or not. But you probably have some sort of security light inside, which would be very dim, but not like it is right now. Right now, it's pretty lit.
Maybe require that any interior lighting during hours of non-operation be for security and safety reasons, and be, consistent with those uses.
And the other thing was doing the math on the parking spaces. I believe the last meeting it was presented that there would be 2 stylists, and 2 stylists can deal with 2 people each, which means 4. But then appointments, surmising, might be every hour, so people might overlap. But I'm just not sure how we get to 9 spaces.
Staff.
Or 10, for that matter.
We've just dropped one,
Okay.
but it is 9.
Seems like 6 would be adequate.
But the 2 stylists will probably drive to work as well, so 2 folks in the
counting that.
chair, 2, and then each of the 2 stylists would be able to handle 2 extra people.
You also have the
So that's
Plus
that's
people
6.
waiting.
So that's 6 actively, and then maybe 2 who are waiting to be. So now we're at 8. I got 4 chairs. I got 2 stylists. That's 6, and then I got 2 people waiting to get into a chair. Now I'm at 8.
I prefer 6, but you're up to 8.
Well, I'm not up to anything, but
I'm sorry, your math is up to 8.
yeah.
But we're talking about a maximum of 9.
Yeah.
Is that
We have 8 and a handicapped right now, I think.
Yes.
8 plus 1 handicapped is what is on this plan. A handicap's required for ADA compliance. We could bring it down to 7. I don't know.
There is parking on the street there, too. No, there isn't. One curb cut there is.
Oh, there's adequate parking on Western Avenue. Yeah.
So the next issue would be shade trees. If you have a parking lot, seems like it would be useful to have some shade trees for the parking lot. And I note there is a sidewalk in the plan, which means then that the curb cuts that are eliminated will be replaced by sidewalk. Yes?
I believe that's the intent, isn't it? There's 3 loose cuts right now, and you're going to bring it down to 1, which we've determined today is 20 feet, and the other 2 you'll
Bring the
recurve
gran-
back it, recur it,
We'll bring the granite back
bring
up,
the granite back up, yeah.
re-pour the sidewalks.
Thank you.
And then the applicant mentioned a dumpster behind the building.
Yep, it's just a little one shown on the plan.
What is it? I was going to say, how big a dumpster are we talking about with a hair salon?
It's probably tiny. The smallest you can get, I'm going to imagine.
Looks like it fits inside a
Triple T.
4x8 stockade
Yes.
fencing.
Okay. And I guess I'd make the same comment that was mentioned before, permeable versus impermeable, or pervious versus impervious surfaces. The last time there was an application, one of your findings was that the gravel portion of the parcel had already been adjudicated and rejected by the Supreme Court. So I'm assuming that lot would be pervious, and perhaps the rest of the lot could be pervious. So you are.
They're not introducing any new blacktop, though. In fact, they're taking blacktop out quite a lot, I think. I don't know what the percentage
Well, I
is,
think you
but
mentioned of driving around the back of the building to go to the dumpster.
is that not blacktop already?
It's currently blacktop behind here. So this changes its blacktop right to about the edge of the building right now. So if we have to put the spaces out back in order to pave that and to have the dumpster out of line of vision from the street, it needs to be enclosed and it needs to be behind the building. In order for the truck to get there, there needs to be a little bit of pavement so he can maneuver. Not to mention that that last space needs to be able to pull in and back out without running into the back of the building. Because
Can you
now-
ask your question again, John? Your
The extent the paving will be pervious or impervious.
we haven't specified it.
Okay.
We tend not to require pervious pavement. I don't know. We've had applicants who have suggested that as part of a comprehensive stormwater management system when they needed to use pervious because they didn't have sufficient retention pond and swale availability. But we, as a general rule, haven't required that as a preference to impervious if the stormwater management plan doesn't require it.
Okay, well, I just still draw your attention to these findings from a year ago.
What was the application? Just give me the number.
It was for a store, convenience store, item 31. From your findings. If I read it.
If you'd like to admit that to the board, that'd be great. We don't have that in front of us right now.
I think that's it. I think you're doing a great job.
Can we have your...
One thing I would say about pervious paving, though, is that it is at the bottom of it. And I know that the next lot over, private road next to it, is a major issue for the town road department. Flooding in springtime, ice buildup, etc.
Up to Solar Hill, that road?
Water does come off that hill.
Must be one of yours. Any other member of the public wish to speak to this application while we're looking at that?
My last visit. I'm Martha Fenn. I live across the street from you, Color. I am hard of hearing. I cannot hear Brian, and I could not hear a lot of what you discussed tonight. But I still am clinging to the fact that the cars, business cars, they are used for business because they are your patrons, are parked in a residential zone. The Tyler Dot, the gas station, is pre-existing prior use. But the residential zone, the Gibson lot, is residential. And no matter how many bushes you plant, you're still parking cars in a business use in a residential area. And I don't know what Brian decided about that or what you decide, but farewell.
Martha? This property is in what we call the mixed residential area. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, the Gibson lot. The residential area where they have 40 feet of grass, 80 feet of grass, and parking for 6 people. 6 cars and grass in front.
And there are 2 parcels there.
Yes.
A full lot. And one was the subject of a lawsuit years ago concerning zoning.
Yes.
And it was determined that that lot cannot be paved and used with the commercial use of the gas station.
And the Vermont Supreme Court decision has not been overturned.
Nor has it been admitted into evidence before the board. We don't have any information regarding that decision.
Oh, I have it.
It was admitted at the last meeting.
I don't believe so. I think it was discussed. I don't know that that...
I was one of the plaintiffs, so was Louise DeWitt.
Has that been admitted into the board's evidence?
I think there's a little confusion here. It was admitted into the previous hearing for a convenience store.
Which we rejected.
Yes. I don't believe it's been introduced in this hearing.
And these are different hearings, different matters before the board.
But when I testimony last meeting, I raised that issue with you.
Yeah, but I don't have that. I don't have that admitted as evidence before this board.
You want it admitted? You want me to go home and get it?
If you'd like it to be admitted into evidence for the board,
well,
we need to have
it in your minutes.
We require that the applicant and the interested parties provide us the evidence that we need in order to make an informed decision.
Last time.
Well, where's the? If this is two lots, I'm hearing now that this is 2 lots. Is that correct?
It's not too old. It's still
No. There are 2 properties here, 2 lots. And do we know where the line is, the property line is?
I know that we pay taxes on one piece of property, 205 West
Okay.
Ave. And when you look it up on the town map,
Sure.
that is the parcel as outlined in this diagram.
And if a town wants to turn it into a business zone, then doesn't he have to apply to the zoning board of adjustment?
We don't have that anymore. The DRB has taken over its
They
functions.
don't, according to zoning board.
This is something I'd like to clear up. I recall this being spoken of at that last meeting, and I thought it was coming from the chair or vice chair, a comment to the effect that case in the past referred to the gas station, and since then it has become one lot and is now being treated, and that wasn't applicable. Now maybe I don't remember that right, but I feel that somehow we have to know about this.
Can you just speak to that Spoon's comment?
Yes. I believe Spoon has a general understanding of what did happen last time, and I believe that the court case to which they're referencing, although it was before my time, history and stories say that it was in relation to an expanded use of that lot at the time as a Sunoco station. So that it was my understanding last time when we came here that because the lot was no longer used as the pre-existing non-conforming gas station, and I believe that's partially why a year or so ago the convenience store got turned down, that this was a less intense use, and so that did not apply because that was specific to the gas piece. That was my understanding.
Is that ringing any bells? If
Every
not,
five
Tom.
years, they have appealed to pave the mud, dirt Gibson lot, and every 5 years they have been turned down.
Brian, do you know, in our findings at this point in time, we refer to a single lot, a single deed, 0.39 acres. Is it two lots or one lot?
I could go and review that very quickly, Tim.
Can you review that?
Yeah.
Because if it's two lots, then
It isn't.
it isn't. So no, so it's some.
We get one tax bill for the entire amount. What happened back then,
You want the-
which is before my time also, had nothing to do with me. They were going to add on to a non-conforming pre-existing use, making it a 2 or 3 bay station. Shut down. It was okayed by the town of Brattleboro. They took it to the Supreme Court of the state of Vermont, and they said that we couldn't add on to a non-conforming pre-existing use.
Okay.
And from time to time, there was a mud puddle where that 40 by 80 foot thing is. And at one time, I was going to have somebody pave it just to clean it up so that, the water was this deep. And it was shut down every time we tried to do it. And because it was a non-conforming pre-existing use. When it came before you folks for the convenience store, adding on to that, the same thing. It's a non-conforming pre-existing use. And you can't do that. And now we're not talking about a non-conforming pre-existing use.
We're talking about a use of
Not a
less.
gas station.
We're talking about a use of lesser non-conformance.
I mean, we used to do tons of gas through that place. It was really busy. And it's really quiet, we'll be quiet as a...
Just for me right now, what portion of the lot is paved and what portion, actually paved,
About
blacktop?
half of it's paved.
About half is paved.
I didn't know it was going to be paved. The guy came in, paved the front, and paved the back too. I didn't want it paved.
Oh, when the tanks got taken out?
Yeah, when they cleaned the whole...
When they got cleaned up. What portion is gravel?
Probably back 40 feet.
The back 40 feet?
Probably.
It's a piece
So-
40 by 80 on the west side.
And that's the 40 by 80 piece on the west side. So if we take the line, can I assume we take that line straight down? Little chunk there. And we've just moved the parking spaces to the east.
Correct.
So more of that is going to be going gravel back to grass
With trees.
with vegetation of some description. So we're talking about, maybe, if I look at this here, 10 feet, perhaps 10 feet. 10 by 80. No, actually, it isn't even by 80 because the front's grass now. We've got a 25-foot front yard setback in grass. So it's probably 10 by 55 or something. And the having not read this, but the restrictions on that 10 by 55, or if there are restrictions that apply, they are that it shall not be paved.
Right.
But it could be gravel, as it is now.
I don't see that necessarily. My quick reading of this case is consistent with what I thought it would say, and that is, this talks about the increase of a non-conforming use, and that there are restrictions on the ability to increase non-conforming uses. Right. Now, there's a difference between a non-conforming use, which has to do with the intensity of the use, the nature of the use, and then a non-conforming building or a non-conforming lot, one that doesn't have the appropriate setbacks, or the building is too large, or in some way the building structure isn't in conformity with the zoning ordinance. This case was a non-conforming use case, and this has been a non-conforming use for a long, long, long time. And recently, this board decided that the applicant's plans regarding the use as a gas station, or I think a neighborhood store maybe, were inconsistent with our rules regarding non-conforming use, that in fact the use was not becoming less non-conforming, less intense. But at the last meeting, we decided that that's no longer the case when we're dealing with a hair salon, because a hair salon is a less non-conforming use than its current non-conforming use. Then, when we decided that that was the case, we've decided that this is not an expansion of the use. And having parking for a smaller non-conforming use reduces the non-conformance, even to increase its, or to change its site plan characteristics by adding paving. This case talked about somebody who said, I have a gas station, and it's a current and existing non-conforming use, and I would like to put a gravel or a paved parking lot over here. And what the court said was, no, you can't do that, because if you do that, if you add that paved portion on the adjacent lot, you are, in fact, increasing its non-conforming use, the intensity of its use. But I think that that's not the situation we have here, because the hair salon with site plan changes is a less intense non-conforming use than the existing gas station use. So it's not a fair summary of this case to say that the Supreme Court said, thou shalt not put asphalt on the neighboring property. What the Supreme Court said is, thou shalt not put asphalt on the neighboring property because it increases the nonconformance of the existing use.
My point is that last year in your findings, you found that it should not be paved.
In connection with a decision...
The reason that it's not paved is because it was never a non-conforming use. It was requested to be a non-conforming use, but it was never granted. And people parked their cars on that parcel, but it was never part of the non-conforming
We took a notice of a previous Supreme Court decision. That's what this says. That just is, the board finds that the proposal to pave a gravel portion of the parcel has already been adjudicated and rejected by the Vermont Supreme Court. I think that that is referring to this case in saying that you can't increase the non-conforming use by adding pavement to the next door. And the applicant had come in that application, you probably recall, with a proposal to pave that portion in connection with what this board found was that not a decrease in the nonconformance. So it takes this out of context to say that we've adopted a rule that says that it could never be paved. We adopted a rule that said, please note that the Supreme Court has said that if you are increasing the nonconformance or not decreasing the nonconformance, you can't add pavement to the adjacent property.
Well, it appears that Brian has the sole right to change all that.
No, he doesn't.
Well, he's the zoning board of adjustment.
No, we are. He's the administrator. He's the zoning administrator.
So just to summarize, it's not a fair summary of our decision to say that we couldn't be paved. We said, please note that if you aren't decreasing your nonconformance, that the Supreme Court has already said paving the next door property is impermissible. But the applicant then came back to this board with a substantially different plan that substantially reduced the nonconformance, the intensity of the nonconforming use. And I don't see anywhere in here or in our previous decision where we've precluded the opportunity for the applicant to pave a portion of that parcel, as long as, again, consistent with our zoning ordinance, it decreases the intensity of the nonconforming use. And I think at our last meeting, we decided that a hair salon with 2 or 4 chairs and 6 people is a decrease in the nonconformance compared to its previous nonconforming use, which is a gas station and repair facility.
I understand what you're saying, but the applicant was asking for the nonconforming use of the gas station to be used as the hair salon. And the lot to the west of the gas station is not part of the original nonconforming use.
But I don't know when the merge was done, but it's a single lot right now. There are not 2 lots there. When that lot adjustment was done, I have no idea. But certainly at this point in time, it's one entity.
Lots of bushes.
Brian, did he get his documents back?
Could be one entity.
You have them right now.
You've got copies of it, though?
It's making copies. Yeah.
Okay, well, we would like a copy of that one, too.
I'd like to make a comment. I understand there are some technicalities here. What you are going to get is something far nicer than what exists now in terms of that neighborhood. Whereas now you have a sidewalk and an empty gravel lot from the sidewalk all the way back, you're now going to get 25 feet of landscaping between the sidewalk and that lot. Where now there is sheer asphalt all around the front of the building, you're going to have a grassy area and also other landscaping. It is going to turn a very commercial spot, which is unappealing to you, and perhaps to many other people, and it is going to look quite like it fits in there. Even if you may have a few more feet of asphalt than exists there now.
I mean, somebody mentioned, I don't know what the pretext was, but The context was that the parking on the side of the building versus parking in the back of the building, your preference would be to see the parking in the back of the building. My preference would be to see the parking in the back of the building too, and you would be able to see the parking. And you wouldn't need as much landscaping in front. I understand the neighbors.
That isn't what has been proposed.
Right.
Any other members of the public wish to speak to this application? The there's been just a couple of comments that came out there about shade trees over the parking lot. So, if we had a moment or so ago just discussed, I thought we just discussed landscaping in front of the building, maybe on the corner there or something, or on the side, that side piece that's now going to be grass back over. Perhaps you could consider, or require you plant a tree of some sort that will grow to some magnificence over time.
I might add that there's a lawn out back, which is a lot of greenery, that is on the property from existing neighbor, and it happens to be a pretty nice green space that would be a shame to lose it to a parking lot. And then that would put all the parking out where there's two houses end to end on the east side, and we would have some impact on that second house out there. And that's been our concern, where the western side of the lot is a certain amount of traffic already to going up and down Solar Hill.
I might add, actually, the way you have it, because you're using the 5-foot squares, those rear parking lots are 25 feet in length. And most cars are only about 16 feet in length.
They're actually 3.5 blocks, so that's like 18.
3.5? I see.
The back ones?
I see 5. The 4 in the rear are 5 blocks deep.
Look at the interior
Oh,
striping.
sir, you're counting the curb cut where the pavement is. That's not.
What are you looking at, Spoon?
The 4 spaces, the 4 parking spaces in the rear of the building.
See where it says PP, and then to the right of it, there's a line that goes down 3.5 spaces? That is, sir.
18
parking.
feet.
Pardon me?
That's 18 feet.
Yeah.
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 And that's the parking spot.
You're looking at the left-hand side of that line where the grass stops and the pavement starts. That is, in fact, 25 feet.
I think it's a fairly conforming space as drawn, Spoon.
All right, well, I'm not, okay.
I hear what you're saying, but.
Yeah, all right. All we're saying is use this little pavement.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate Norm's point about the grass in the back of the building. But when I'm looking at the size of the lot back there, it's 100 feet by 60 feet, and if you only really need 16, 30 feet, I guess, of depth for a car to back out, couldn't you fit 8 or 9 parking spaces in the back without absorbing the last 40 feet of that grass?
The spaces. So you're suggesting all the way across, John?
Yeah, even facing to the east as well. I'm not a parking expert, but and that could be fenced and landscaped, so the neighbors didn't have headlights if that was an issue. Although there would be a lot of nighttime traffic.
What's the, I don't know what the side yard setback is.
Say that again?
What's the side yard setback for parking?
Craig, applicant, I mean,
10. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know we accept it like this. We'll have to negotiate
Any,
something.
any other members of the public wish to speak to this application? Any further questions from the board? Looking for... John, are you... Okay. Looking for a motion to approve application 2012-013 with the modifications that we've discussed.
So moved.
Second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Is it an aye? Those against? I abstain. 501. Thank you very much. We'll write that up with a bunch of changes, a lot of changes in there for you. Okay, and the next. Call application 2012-022. Is this, this one is Kerry Crettel?
He has requested that the board vote down the proposal at this time without prejudice so we can reintroduce it at a later date.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve application 2012-022.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Nope.
Aye.
Nope. Aye. You're voting it down.
Oh, I'm voting it down, sorry.
You're voting it down, I hope.
Right.
The applicant has requested we vote we vote his application down without prejudice. All those in favour?
Aye. No?
No.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, it's to vote it down.
As requested.
This is another one where you have to vote no to
The
say.
To vote
application
no to
has to
say
be
yes. Yeah.
stated in the affirmative.
Okay, so one last time.
Everybody say no.
The applicant has requested that we deny his application without prejudice. I have a motion to approve his application. All those in favour? I didn't hear anybody. That's good.
Okay.
Those against?
Nay.
Nay.
I abstain. 051 or 015 or something. Thank you. Next, application 2012-027, Sunel Auto. Please come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi there. Tell us about your application, your project.
My name's Tim Sullivan. I'm an employee of Barlow Signs out of Hudson, New Hampshire. And with me this evening,
It's Joel Pachenko. I'm the manager of the local Sunel store.
we came before the board, I believe it was in February, with a proposal for a roof sign that consisted of illuminated channel letters and then a fascia band, if you will, up on the roof, and we were denied at that time. We have since installed the letters on the wall as allowed by code. And now we're seeking a site plan modification to install fascia bands on that front wall and to wrap around the corners by, I believe it was 8 feet, 10 feet around the corners. These red and orange bands are important identity with the Sunel program. They utilize these bands on just about all of their properties. In fact, on the old property in town, these bands were present. It will be a non-illuminated band in keeping with similar to like the Sunoco station next door. The TD Bank has the fascia bands wrapping their entire property. The Advanced Auto, a couple buildings up, has a full bright red fascia band. So what they're trying to do is help brand their building to make it a little bit easier to recognize that this is in fact the Sunel property. The band will also have two 20-foot LED accent stripes on it, which will just help illuminate it a little bit at night. But these are just, if you will, accent lighting, similar to what Kentucky Fried Chicken has up on their cupola. They have an LED accent band that wraps around. And again, these accent bands will be turned off when the sign itself is off. That's our proposal. Again, it's an attempt to help brand the building further with the Sunel colors and help its recognition.
Why isn't this an appeal of a zoning administrator's decision regarding sign?
It's a different project.
Yeah, I didn't actually refuse them a permit for them. I just recommended that they seek site plan review for.
Okay.
For
It was a roof sign before, and we denied a roof sign. This is now not a roof sign.
Denied a roof sign?
Sorry?
I missed that meeting.
Yeah, it was you were not here. Yeah. They had a roof like this with the sign on top of the roof, you know, like a Western sign.
Oh,
and there's the building, and we said no, you can't have a roof sign, and you can't have a 365 square feet roof sign either.
Okay.
So please come down and make a 96 square foot sign, which is what they've done, and they have now returned with an application to brand the building with a fascia color scheme.
Correct.
Okay.
Brian, does the town plan for the Putney Road area address anything about signs at all?
I don't believe it does, no. When a question, when you say to brand the building, what do you mean by brand?
Like I said, similar to the Sunoco station next door, where they have their on the run or whatever their store name is over the entrance, similar to us with our letters on the face of the building, and then they have their check marks or their checkered and the bright blue bands. It just helps recognize the building to the public. More so than just seeing the letters on the wall. Because a lot of times, let's face it, when you're traveling in traffic, it's a lot easier to see a red and an orange stripe on the building than it is to actually read the sign.
So the intention then is to indicate the presence of a business.
Correct.
And that is a sign.
Not necessarily.
Yes.
Well, you know, I thought, I gave this a lot of thought, and I realized we don't have a definition for the word sign in the zoning regulations. But then again, we don't have a definition for the word pole or home or fence or window. These are terms in our language that we use and accept, that we understand. When we don't, we turn to the dictionary. Because we have no other, we need a definition. When you turn to the dictionary, and that's what I did. I said, well, what is a sign? And I found the American Heritage. It is a respectable dictionary. And a sign is something that suggests the presence or existence of a fact, condition, or quality not immediately evident. It's something that points to something that you wouldn't otherwise recognize. A board, poster, or placard displayed in a public place to advertise or convey information or a direction. I went to the Random House dictionary, I think is also a respectable dictionary, and they use the word, it's an indication. It's meant to indicate something. They went a little bit more, rather than just saying a board, a poster, or placard. They went on to expand mounted on wood, metal, paper, or other material.
We do have a definition for sign, by the way.
Is
Sorry.
that?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was letting you go, but
I had looked.
Well,
for it.
I will read it for you,
Why
and
didn't
this
I
is
see
going to
that?
comfort you no end. But
Anyway.
okay, a sign,
Read
according
that.
to the section 6 of the zoning ordinance. Any structure, device, or representation designed or used to identify, advertise, or call attention to, or direct a person to any business, association, profession, commodity, product, institution, service, entertainment, person, place, thing, or activity of any kind whatsoever, and intended to be visible from a public road.
Okay, well, that's just an
Pretty-
elaboration of the very same definition. So it's hard, and in as much as there is no conflict about whether those colors you stated at the last hearing are the corporate colors, that design is the corporate way that those colors are displayed. I'm finding it impossible to look at it as other than a sign.
If I may, I mean, I think on that stretch of road, the town's kind of already set a precedent. I mean, whether it be Staples with the entire front of their building as a red structure. When the Home Depot was open there, Home Depot had orange awnings that, again, identified the building. I brought up the Sunoco next door, which has a fascia band similar to what we're proposing. A gas station, for example, a Sunoco canopy that wraps 4 sides of it in color. They don't say a name, but it's wrapped in color and it's wrapped in their identity. The TD Bank North is a building with 4 sides of the building wrapped in the TD Bank North colors. I think in that part of town there is definitely a precedent set for what's considered a sign, what's considered a graphic element on the building. And that's where we feel that we're approaching it from, and basically not asking for anything more than our neighbors already have on that stretch of road.
I have one question for you. I certainly take your point that 4 adjacent buildings, and Home Depot with its orange coloration is a prime example of branding in a structure or in a fascia. The examples that we have here that are typical of Putney Road and actually Canal Street and West Bratt, whether it's Pilot Station or in Cumberland Farms, you name it, Shell, it's all they all do it. Possibly one difference is that you're proposing lighting strips in this. You're proposing LED strips down the middle. If it purely was, in inverted commas, a paint job on the side of the building as a fascia, I would consider that it's part of the architectural element and design of the building. As soon as we start to put in lighting elements, then maybe it changes.
Okay.
So the TD Bank North doesn't have a green line running around its building in LEDs. Sunoco just happens to paint the gas station, yellow and blue, but they haven't, drawn it out with either an LED or a, what's the neon, old-fashioned type way that they would have done in the past. Personally, I think your point is valid. I won't say there's a precedent set, but there's a clear case of branding in many, many cases in terms of other structures and other businesses in the district.
There are a couple of additional references that might be helpful. There is if not a definition, well, it probably is a definition of a wall sign. So if this were going to be a sign, I think it would be a wall sign, and that is when the sign is painted on or attached, or so it includes painted on or attached or otherwise applied to any part of a building, canopy, awning, fence, window, or other structure. The wall sign is the area that is the smallest rectangle that encompasses all its lettering and accompanying figures, designs, logos, or symbols. And so I don't think that this really has any, the proposed additional coloration, it doesn't have a figure, a design, a logo, or a symbol, together with any background of a color different from the color of the structure. So this would be a background that would be different than the color of the structure, but the question is it a background to those figures, designs, logos, or symbols? And it appears that the background for this sign is white, and the proposed color is very different. And then, to throw more confusion into the mix here, the following signs, and it uses the word signs, this is section 4502B, and these are, so it uses the word signs, so I guess it acknowledges that it could be that these signs are permitted. The following signs do not require a permit when located on the immediate property and within the size set out below, and it includes decorative or architectural features of a building except integral signs, and I don't see a definition for integral signs.
It would be something carved into the building.
A decorative or architectural feature?
Like the Italian-American building downtown, I believe,
Yeah.
was.
Where it's engraved right into the stone.
Exactly.
But that might be an architectural feature, but what's a decorative feature? Isn't a painting some stripes a decorative feature? I don't know. I'm just...
What just your 4502?
Yeah, 4502. So I guess two questions. One, is it a sign because it's the background, it includes the background of symbols and letters and the like, and even if it is a sign, is it then a decorative feature of the building such that it has an exception under our sign ordinance? I think that's the question. I don't know the answer.
I like the way you were going with it originally.
Me?
It's fine as it is as long as there's no lighting.
Okay.
That makes it a sign, or more of a sign that...
Well, we know it's a sign. It's only about whether it violates a regulation or is in fact those regulations. What the issue is that the regulations have not been enforced in that section of town. Do we enforce them now?
My feeling is it's almost too late to enforce them in that instance because it's so widespread and it's the whole town, not just that section. I mean, 'cause you can look at the Shell station, the Gulf station, they're all the same up on Canal Street. There's Irving station, Mobile.
Yes, Brian.
I think if you do find that or feel that it is a violation of the zoning code, then you're in no position to approve it. You're not to approve non-conforming uses.
Well,
even if there's multiple precedents for that type of what you now feel is a non-conformance.
Like Home Depot that paints its or installs orange canopies. If this company just painted the side of their building red and orange, we'd be done. I mean, that's just a paint job, I mean, this is just a paint job. If Home Depot, they could come in and paint their canopies green or blue, but they paint them orange every single store across the country. And you see a Home Depot store, you know exactly what a Home Depot store is. TD Bank North is green the same. Wherever you go and you're in Georgia and at TD Bank North, it's green stripes or bands around the thing. It's painted on there. It's architectural detail at that level. I mean, we've approved TD Bank North signs in this town here when they changed to the new style, and we considered the sign to be whatever it was, a 6x4 block. The rest of the building and all the stripes around it, that was fascia or something. I don't know. Certainly wasn't considered sign, and clearly it's branding.
Is this, even with the LED strip, I mean, is that considered decorative, just a decorative feature of the building? Even though it's going to have an LED in it?
To me, it's as decorative or no more decorative than a Sunoco canopy or a TD Bank North canopy or Shell canopy.
I would have to agree.
Any members of the public wish to speak to this application? God, I was hoping for help. The one time you want someone to... There we go. We have one comment. You think it'll look nice?
I mean, it's not.
Would you please stand up? Give us your name.
Okay, my name's Ann Anderson. I don't have anything I know about these good folks, but I've driven down that road, and that place is lit up with all kinds of decorative signs. You know, the restaurants, the grocery stores. I mean, they're not gonna be blinding us. You know, they just want to put up a couple of decorative. Their logo, actually, it's a logo. I mean, it's not hurting. I mean, it's just I don't know, how high is it? About that big?
It's a little more than that.
A little more than that.
Okay. I mean, it's not going to be sucking up the whole building, so we.
It's about 3 feet.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe a bird might, land in behind it and build a nest or something.
300 square feet.
Pardon?
300 square feet.
But, I
Get
mean,
me out of this, Craig.
I mean, if
Well,
everybody else has already got it.
We understand the issue.
Yeah.
That neck of town looks the way it looks, and a sign like this, in the way that looks now, isn't inappropriate. The question is,
sorry, it's all
we
parts of
have
town, though.
zoning regulations to try and direct us towards a certain kind, our image of what our town should look like. And that's what we have to figure out.
I think my take is this, that the reason, and we may just be dealing with a deficiency in the ordinance, and the reason why Sunoco can do what it does is because it's not the background of a sign with words. The reason why TD Bank can do what it does is because it's not the background of a sign with words. They are separate. It's an architectural decorative feature of the building. Now, it's meant to identify the building and the occupant of the building, but it's not a wall sign. And so if this were, different, and only slightly different, I think I would consider it to be a wall sign. If it encompassed symbols and words and letters and numbers, I think it would be a wall sign. The minute it stops to encompass symbols and becomes a decorative feature, then, like other decorative features in the district, it's permitted, not necessarily, encouraged, or desired, but permitted in the district.
It's a good point. My concern is, if we accept this, is there any restraint on signage in the town? And that, I would advocate not accepting this and giving the SNL the opportunity, as they have it, to get together with the North Brattleboro Business Association and propose to the town that area have a special sign zoning regulation.
But then I think you're almost handicapping Sunel. You're handicapping Sunel based on what's already going on that stretch of road. I could understand if it was if everything was equal. Sure, you have every right, but everything isn't equal. And by telling Sunel, I know Sunoco has it 50 yards away from you, but you can have it. I think you're unjustly handicapping.
I realize that, and I'm aware that every time a law, a statute, a regulation changes, everybody that has been non-conforming beforehand, before that time, gets grandfathered in until such time as they change, and there is an inequality that unless you can, it's not typical, or I don't even know of laws that require everything to be redone.
The problem is, Spoon, that we're not quite talking about grandfathering. The Advance Auto Parts store and their sign went in when this ordinance was in effect. It's not that it went in, it was permitted under the rules at the time. The rules then changed, and we say to somebody, well, if we change the rules on you, we're going to let you continue to do what you were doing before, but you just can't make it worse, right? That's the idea of grandfathering. This Advance Auto Parts sign was approved when this ordinance was in effect. So it's not a grandfathering issue. We approved that sign.
Yeah, I understand
and
that.
so we're going to change our behavior.
Mode of operation, yeah.
And I understand Brian's point that we shouldn't make it. We shouldn't choose not to enforce our ordinance, but we would run into the town would run into a problem in trying to enforce. May run into a problem in trying to enforce this decision because there is some limit on our ability to, enforce occasionally and not enforce in other times. And so if we come to substantially different decisions regarding signage under this ordinance, we run the risk of not being able to enforce it at all.
If we accept it, what could be the consequences of that?
Yeah, we could have a proliferation of Advance Auto Parts.
The reason that we have in fact, this page with the 4 photographs of other places is almost perfectly illustrates the problem and the reason for the sign ordinance in the first place. You have 2 businesses, similar, near each other, that begin vying for the biggest sign. Well, when you look at the Advanced Auto Parts, look at the size if people are going to see them first. So we need a sign that's even more noticeable. Now the third place needs even bigger sign. And what had happened in this town is we turned, as it happened, our main street was beginning to turn into what people thought of as a New Jersey strip with neon signs, and it was getting, the feeling was the quality of life was being diminished by the competition for the largest and most noticeable signs. And so the ordinance has been a unbelievable amount of time spent writing and revising the sign ordinances, let alone enforcing them. But I just fear not keeping a lid on it, because the next guy...
Can I ask, ask you a question?
Sure.
Sorry,
I'll stop.
How critical how critical are the LED bands in there? Without the LED bands,
the intention of the LED bands are to again brand the colors at night. That's the intention of the bands, to have some visibility of the orange and the red at night. If that's the deal breaker, could we remove them? Sure. Would we prefer to have them? Absolutely. Because otherwise, then we start talking about do we put some recessed downlights along that edge of the building to illuminate the band, and then I think we get into a whole different animal of not to mention the expense of doing them versus the LED strips. But then again, now suddenly we're going to be lighting up the whole side of the building to light these bands. And that's our intention, is just to have some night illumination of the red and the orange. I mean, with regards to some of the comments, and I can understand, it's not like we're painting our roof orange like Howard Johnson. I mean, I think all we're doing is we're adding a decorative element to the building that helps with our brand.
But what we're saying, in effect, if this is allowed, is that you could paint your whole roof as as an orange and red stripe.
They could now. They could now.
And we're choosing not to.
They could now.
I
There's
guess.
nothing stopping them now. I mean,
guess
this is
there
nothing.
are
This
no
is the point.
design standards.
There are no
Right.
design standards.
Right.
They could remove the shingles from that roof and put an orange and red set of shingles on that roof, and that would make even more of a statement than this ban does.
Okay.
And there would be nothing preventing them doing that. There's
Yeah.
there's nothing right now preventing them from painting it. If the painter came out with a can of orange paint and a can of red paint and painted the top two lines of board red and orange, there's nothing we could say. Personally, I think for me, it becomes a sign rather than an architectural detail when it's got lighting in it. It's got LED bands or it's got some form of, illumination. Then it's clearly a sign. But without that, I don't have a problem with it. Brian.
You do have some power to review design elements as a matter of site plan review. It does call for buildings being compatible with the local streetscape.
And the local streetscape?
It's yours to
The local
determine whether it's
streetscape, I mean, you just sunk the ship. This is the character of the neighbourhood, and it's the character of all of our commercial districts. All right. Any further questions for the applicant from any member of the board? I'm looking for...
I'd prefer that it neither be illuminated by LED nor substantially illuminated than by downcast lighting in the eve.
Okay.
If it's a decorative element, it doesn't need to be illuminated.
We're fine
I
with
think
illuminating those things.
illumination signs.
With that said, i.e. with no LED bands and no additional lighting of this decorative element, I'm looking for a motion to approve application 2012-027.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favour?
Aye.
They got 3?
1, 2, 3.
Those against? 2?
You're going to have to.
I'm going to vote in favour. 4-2-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Application 2012-030.
I'm out of here.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Weststone Station. And you dare discuss signs with us.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate one to come before, right before us.
I'm going to just advise you that Mr. Price has to leave. He leaves at 10 o'clock. He has to leave the board. The number on the board now drops to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need a majority decision, which is 4 in favour.
Guess we'll take our chances.
You take your chances. Sorry, Brian.
Tim, I wonder if in situations like this, you might consider just closing the evidentiary hearing, having absent board members review the testimony, and then taking the vote later.
On Western Station? Yeah, we can do that.
Situation like
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, especially if you get the mood of the board that it's
Not looking-
necessary.
that we should be doing that.
Yeah.
Please tell us about your application.
So, I'm Kimberly, by the way. Hi, this is David Heiler and Amy Brady, the new owners.
Two out of
Tim
three.
Brady is absent tonight. So, we are getting site plan approval and signage approval from you guys. So, first of all, the site plan that we currently have, we're asking to open up the entrance to the site that's to the east of the existing entrance. At one point, it was an entrance onto the site. There's already a curb cut that's existing. Do you have a site plan?
Yep.
The previous owner closed it to get more parking in. We've reconfigured the site to sort of get people to recognize the building a little bit more, make the area a little more pedestrian friendly, make the waterfront a little more appealing. So we're doing different types of paving materials, adding 750 square feet of green space, doing nice landscaping, covering up the propane tank with some kind of wood treatment, some kind of fencing. What else?
Yeah, bike racks.
Bike racks. What else? The driveway that we're asking for, we'd like it to be one way. One of the biggest challenges of the site is the lack of parking. And in order to compensate for that, having that one-way drive allows people, when it's cold outside, handicapped, elderly, to be able to drop off in front of the door, and then they can go, whoever drops them off can go find parking somewhere else. Yep, it also allows for access for delivery trucks, any other types of large vehicles that we need to access the site.
If I may, one of the issues that Tristan, the former owner, had mentioned to us that there was some traffic blockage when trucks would pull in and they would have to pull back out again, and they had a difficult time backing out back into the road and caused some traffic issues. Our idea was that if trucks could pull in to our new ramp that we've proposed, that they would load in and then just be able to pull right back out. Obviously,
So,
it's not very smooth, but it would...
Is that a loading dock there, or you say it's a ramp?
It would be a ramp, but it is an elevated ramp so that they could load in right there.
It's the same kind of condition that exists already, except we're just moving it to a different location.
For easier access.
And the other curb cut would be two-way or bidirectional? You're not changing that? So
Not at all.
Just so for drop-off and deliveries, you can come in on what I guess would be the eastern end, and the other way would stay the same.
Right.
We had Stevens and Associates do some do site studies, basically of different ways different sized trucks could access the site without doing an 8-point turn, basically. There were 4 or 5 different ways that you can get a 45-foot truck in there, either by turning into the proposed green space across and backing up, or looping around, or driving in so you're headed north and then doing a 2-point turn.
And not that it's relevant, but we have no intention of having tractor-trailer trucks come in there. I mean, our goal is to have much smaller, box trucks,
It would be the
produce trucks, and local trucks. But even those, will have a difficult time moving in and out.
So trucks like Cisco uses, or most of those are tractor
Hopefully not
trailers.
Cisco.
If Burlington Foods, a lot of those use the smaller box trucks.
10-wheelers.
That's our goal. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, if we're going to have to get something from Cisco and that happens, this would make that available. But that's certainly not the intention for that.
So the turning radius, if we were going out towards on the bridge, the turning radius is more than adequate going in the New Hampshire direction. The other direction, is it? Seems that maybe it's a little tight, or does that?
I mean, if you're coming out, if you're going across the front entrance and out.
No. If you're only going to come in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Stevens looked, or whoever it was, looked at the turning radiuses there for the smaller trucks.
Yep. They do have to turn into the other lane, the oncoming traffic lane. The vehicles aren't moving that fast, but in order to get that turn radius, I think it's a 25-foot turn radius. You do have to sort of pull into the
Swing
other
out.
lane.
Yeah.
But the traffic has to stop anyway if the truck is coming over the bridge, because it's not wide enough, so they'd be stopped anyway.
Okay. How much on-site parking do you have here?
There's 18 spaces in this current plan.
And then there's additional parking across the street in the station lot?
19 spaces that are free parking.
Is that metered space, or is that permit parking over there? What is that?
We heard it was actually open, free parking.
Oh, really?
That's what we were told, and I
Is
don't
that
know
going
if
to
that's...
continue to be?
Currently, that's the plan, yes.
Yeah, not to meter or permit that parking?
I believe that's correct.
And it's municipal lot, it's owned by the
Yes,
town.
it is.
Right.
And that's not going to become part of that greenway for the river that's proposed, where the buildings were just torn down?
I think they'll keep the parking on the west side of the lot nearest the railroad track. The existing
Yeah.
parking, I think, stays. All of their construction redevelopment is on the east side near the river. And they need to keep a traveled lane because Merrill gas is back there, and that's the only way Merrill can get out through that traveled way.
Talk a little bit about the vegetation, just the landscaping you're putting in here.
We're leaving the existing trees that are there, and some of the shrubs that aren't weeds will remain. Otherwise, low bushes. It's important for us to make sure there's connectivity between the two areas and to get people to be able to comfortably walk downtown. So lower scale types of landscaping elements.
There are some trees already that are in the power lines that are right along the sidewalk there that'll come out.
There are shrubs by the propane tank that's to the northwest of the site.
Is the propane tank remaining there?
Yes.
I saw some comment somewhere that it's in the floodway there. Is that correct?
I think we should have it anchored.
Yeah, you will have to have it anchored, but so you're going to leave it in the same spot and anchor it?
Yep.
And then you have to have protective bollards in front of it,
Yes,
so that this truck can't reverse into it.
Right, we've already talked to our landscaper about that, or I think it's the paver.
Have you had any contact with the state floodplain coordinator?
We have actually, there was a question initially about whether or not we were in the floodplain, and it's determined, I think there's about 25 square feet or something. There's a little corner that is in the floodplain. Initially, they had said we would have to get flood insurance, and we looked into that, and we're told that, I think Brian actually helped us significantly identify that there is a very small corner of the parking lot that's in the floodplain. So,
Can you talk a little bit, because I'm sure we're going to get into it. There are two applications here, one for a restaurant and one for a brewery. Is it all not one application, really?
well, brewery to operate a brewery, you actually have to have a separate business. It has to be an entirely separate business, and it has to be separate entrances and a separate actual, physically separated by a wall within the. If you're going to have it within the same building, it has to be separate. It can have a door to there, but there can't be access to the public to that business. And once the licensing is the way it's set up, when you have your brewer's license, you have an actual business, and that brewery sells the beer to the restaurant. So there is actually two separate businesses, which is why we had to have the two different LLCs. And it will be its own designated space where the current bar is now will be the brewery.
So is there a difference between a brew pub and a brewery?
I'll let you handle that one because I know Tim and Amy are brewing experts, and there are differences.
There's definitely differences. A brew pub, though, there's a kind of a vague area. McNeil's could be considered a brew pub. Their location downtown. They serve some food and they make their own beer. Regarding a brewery, technically a brewery can be in a brew pub. That's the actual equipment and the process is the brewery. If you're a brewery for bottling and distribution, or you can be a brewery by the state laws for your own property only.
And why are you not a brew pub? Or are you?
I don't think there's any real...
We are a brew pub.
Yes.
It would be a brew pub. Again, you know, the brewery, as long as the brewery is separate from, the actual brewing business is separate from the restaurant, it could be a brew pub.
And McNeil's gets around that because McNeil's isn't considered a restaurant.
Isn't considered a restaurant.
They have some food, but they don't
have to serve food as required by law to serve alcohol.
How much beer is it, or brewing is actually going to occur? Just give me an idea of the scale.
It's a small system. It's going to be a nano system. So essentially, we'll only brew one beer a week. It will release on Wednesdays, and when the beer's gone, it's gone until the next batch is ready. My husband explained that it's essentially about 4 to 5 kegs of our own beer per brewing cycle.
How big are the kegs?
Of the half barrels.
The half barrels?
Yeah.
13 and a half.
Yeah.
13 and a half gallons per keg.
So you're looking at 60, 70 gallons a week.
Right. It'll be gone before the weekend is our general, which is kind of part of the appeal for us in terms of the marketing aspect, is that it helps to...
That's your Wednesday business, doesn't it?
The beer geeks will come up for the unveiling of the new beer. It's gone by Saturday when you're full anyway. You announce what the next beer is going to be, and everyone shows up on Wednesday again. And once we develop a few of the recipes that we really like, we can contract brew that in at a larger facility and sell it in our own taps. It's generally as much as we love brewing, I mean, our goal is not to become a major brewery. Our goal is to become a great restaurant that brews some excellent beers, and we get the marketing aspect from that.
Knowing the brewery piece is our ability to expand down the road.
There's a question about the parking. We wanted to see that. Thank you, Kimberly. That shows the parking across the street. It's just a drawing from plans from the park, and with our parking space included. And what we're trying to do there is aesthetically is try and create a similar picture of our parking and our lot with the green space and that lot across the street. So we're trying to make one nice long line of parking, and then where you see our the more colored parking area, paving area on ours would line up a little bit more with that green space. So we sort of tie the two properties together.
Talk to me about lighting and signage. It's our favourite topic tonight.
Apparently.
We are
Really, I was like, what could we have done before so now?
Absolutely enthralled by... Let's deal with lighting first.
Our goal with the lighting is there's no neon, there's no LED. Our goal here was to create flat lettering and have down lighting. We aren't even trying to go for more branding necessarily, but we're trying to create an aesthetic appeal that is sort of ties in with not only the old look and feel of the diner, the Riverview Diner that used to be there, but also with the train station, the bridge. We want kind of an attractive look, yet still have a bit of an old-fashioned look, if you will.
So the lighting is I don't know what you call it, shaded, downcast. Predominantly, it's above the signs.
Yes.
Is there lighting in the parking lot at all, anywhere?
There's one pole, utility pole, that is next to where the old sign was.
Existing.
Is that on this site plan?
It's existing, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, in the green grass area?
Yep.
What kind of lighting's on that? What's existing now?
It's just a regular street light.
Street light? CVPS light? Is it yours or is it CVPS?
I think it's CVPS.
Yeah, they're our neighbor.
It's not very appealing if there's something that we can replace it
Let's
with.
take it one thing at a time. Right? We'll get to that.
It may be CVPS under license to the restaurant, and you get a bill for it.
That's a.
In which case you can change it. That's common. I don't know. What about talk about the signs now, briefly, if you would.
So the signs above Restaurant, Beer Garden, Brewery I wouldn't say that those are. I wouldn't say that those are branded by any means. It's probably just going to be a Times New Roman white paint on wood slats. Sort of vintagey looking. If you by Hotel Pharmacy, there's something similar painted on the brick building that Altiplano was in. Same idea. It stemmed from old. A long time ago, the logo originally stemmed from how train companies used to brand themselves, and they used to put it on the side of some kind of container. So I guess the letters are sort of inspired by that. There's one real sign that has a W and says Whetstone Station above the front door, but as of now, that's the only real branded sign that's going to be.
That would be our logo, just be a circular logo.
So let's talk about that sign.
Mm-hmm.
You got Whetstone Station. It's above the front door. That's what size is that? 10 by.
Right here. No, it's not right there. Yeah.
24 square feet or
Yeah.
something.
9'6" by 2'3".
Let's call that 24 square feet for the sake of argument at the moment.
Okay.
And then adjacent to the door is a W. Is that right?
Yep.
That's a projecting sculpture.
Right.
Maybe it's not a sign. Perhaps it's a sculpture. Is it a sculpture?
Exactly.
Let's call it a sculpture for the moment.
All right.
And are there any other signs adjacent to the door? No.
No.
Okay, and then you have 3 painted signs and a large logo thing on the end wall with a huge W on it.
That's a mural.
A mural.
Yeah.
We don't know what it's going to
Is a mural a sign?
I guess that would be that would be what we're asking you.
Or is it a decorative element?
I think it's a decorative element.
Well, I mean, as you all know, you're looking at the back of the building. So what we're trying to do is make the back of the building more appealing. Make it, more.
Do you have signs on the riverside? On the other side?
We do not.
No.
Everything faces the water, and that's one of the downfalls of the site, is that when you go to this building, you don't really realize that, it's sort of underplayed. So we're trying to make the building more appealing from all directions, including from across the street when that's finished.
Right.
Ideally, this becomes an all-encompassing site.
It always looked like a warehouse, and I think we're trying to create this as a facade that is attractive from even a longer distance away, without creating sort of the lighting glow that goes up in the air. We don't want to create that. We want to create something that's attractive that creates a draw, without being a big glow in the middle of the water down there.
And you'd like to be seen from how far away?
I mean, ideally,
New York.
Main Street. Main Street. I mean, that's all we're looking for.
What are the heights of the other signs? 1.5 feet?
Yep.
So you've got, if we were to tot up we've got 15 square feet, 15 square feet.
I think there's the total signage.
Is
that
it
we're
somewhere?
asking for.
Yeah, it's right
Signage
in
by
the
use, the
bold
top left
letters
corner.
there, Tim.
The bit that I can't add up, 41 square feet.
75 and 47.25.
What's the total? So the total is 89.
Yeah.
And then the bottom one actually is not getting the one projecting sign, so that's minus 12.5 feet. Actually, minus 12.5 feet on both of them. So instead of 41.75, it's going to be 29.
What's wall signage in the area? 96. Total 96.
Is that with 2 businesses?
I think 96 is the cap.
I'm spacing out right now, Jim, but I did calculate that it's conforming for 2 businesses.
And the mural?
No.
The mural's not included.
The idea of the mural for us was just to create something that looked like the side of a railway car, and it was
It does, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we aren't trying to sneak something in. It just was, we thought it would look cool
You have to
inside
put
of the building.
train wheels underneath it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it really does look like it could move.
I was just putting actual train little trestle right there, little, carriage right there.
What are you going to do? You have a one-way system there. You're going to have like an internal street sign that says, no exit or stop, wrong way, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or a train sign,
Yeah, that's
of some description.
Yeah, that will go in the green space.
Yeah, so that people don't try and go out the wrong way.
Right. And again, that space is going to be created so that it doesn't even really look like, you won't naturally want to drive on there that way. Tristan's reason, we talked to him, he said the reason he took it out was that people just kept driving, through there, and it was clogging things up, and we don't want to make that we want it to be a one-way driveway, clearly.
I'm not here yet. We have 99 square feet without the big W on the wall.
It's actually, it's 90, whatever that adds up to, 99 square feet minus, minus 25.
Minus.
The one projecting sign,
Which is the projected sign, the big W?
Little W.
the little W next to the door.
Oh, that one, yeah.
There were going to be two of them.
Okay.
And we're no longer doing that. Right?
Which one
We
I'm,
can do it if we can prove it
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that. If you want to take it out, we'll take it out.
I'm looking at the, I'm just trying to understand first what I'm reading here. I see signage by use and brewery and restaurant. Which one of those lines is referring to the big W?
One projecting
One
the
projected.
sculptural logo.
And that's actually 12 and a half square feet, like a 3x4?
Yeah, it was going to be a piece of metal.
Oh, that's,
Piece
well,
of
it's,
bridge.
okay, I'm confused because what you have up there doesn't appear to be, I would never guess that was 3 feet by 4 feet.
Yeah,
I think
it's a
you may be
perspective rendering.
confused. The W that Timberley is talking about is barely visible.
Oh, on the right of the
immediately
right
right.
door,
Yes.
Okay, the one I'm talking about is under that, on the left side, under
That
the
is
restaurant.
that is a decorative feature.
Right.
That's a decorative.
That's our
feature.
decorative, decorative element, as it will.
That's a rail car that came off the rails
That's
from the
right.
station and just happened to land up there.
Just took it right off the side of the
When
car.
you like the sign, it's a decorative feature. When it's an ugly ass thing, then it's a sign.
We like
I
the
mean,
way
what
you
are we
think.
doing to the sign laws in this town? I mean, you know, Sam is gonna want, he's gonna wanna go back to what he had. I mean, what you think, if he's got a big sign now, you should see what it was before.
No, we're still limited at 96 square feet. This is
That's
conforming.
without the W.
This is conforming. This is right now we have restaurant, beer garden or beer garden, brewery, and Weststone Station above the door. And there's two businesses here. We're apparently required by law to be two
I
businesses.
understand that everything.
We can therefore have signs that are conforming. Conceivably, the only thing that is not conforming from a sign perspective is the side of the rail car.
I understand.
The large W,
Right. I
which
understand.
is somewhat huge, I'd say. It's the whole side of the building.
Yeah, it's going to say Brattleboro, Vermont. Maybe it has some trees. It really is going to look like a mural.
And again, we haven't even spec'd this out. I mean, this is something that is, we like the way that looks, but that's not even.
I would like to, of course, find a local artist to.
Unfortunately, sometimes those things get counted as signed murals.
Understood.
What if it doesn't have our brand in it?
Well, it's got words.
Brattleboro, Vermont.
Bellows Falls came unstuck with that when somebody painted the side of a barn.
And what happened with that?
Had to get taken out.
Take it down.
It got taken out.
They painted the whole side of a barn. It's welcome to Bellows Falls or whatever. It was a pretty sign too, pretty mural, and it was.
No, they didn't do that. No, they got
Is it still there?
They got a statutory exception.
They did.
Yes.
Oh, You're going to need a statutory exception.
So we paint it first, and then we
Is it still
ask
there?
forgiveness?
Yeah.
It's still, okay.
Yeah.
Side of the building.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still there.
There was a fuss, though, correct?
Yeah, no, they needed a statutory exception. They had to make a change in the law to accept that part.
Did you find anything, Craig?
Looks good to me.
Would any member of the public like to speak to this application?
Sounds like it's gonna be a nice place for
As soon as we get done with this and
It's,
we can close on this, we'll
Yes.
start working on
for
it.
their permits,
Yeah.
so we can close on the property.
Unfortunately, it's not our duty as a board to talk about how nice it is to eat there or what the menu is or any other associated fact.
But you can come down anytime, we'll talk about that.
The board is going to work. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's, any other questions from the board? Looking for a motion to approve. Is it one application, Brian, or two?
It's one application with a conditional use approval for the brewery portion of it.
And the brewery is conditional?
We didn't have to get a conditional use, I thought. Not anymore.
Well, it's, you know,
Why
Let's
don't you
talk
get
about
it?
that.
in here
Sorry?
someplace.
Why don't you get it? If you're going to get it, you should get it.
Get it?
Get the conditional use approval.
There was a feeling that the current proposal is too small to really call for a conditional use, but it would allow for future expansion at the applicant's discretion.
Yeah, and even probably an expansion of brewing capacity for consumption off-site.
That's if they have
Right,
to.
so if you
What-
if you ever
what-
thought that this would be a great
what zone are we
location,
in?
then you'd actually
What zone are we in?
export some
Urban?
beer.
Urban center, yeah.
And that's included, that, with the
Why
conditional
isn't-
use
If I
Wha-
think that
why
if
isn't-
you get your approval as an accessory use to the restaurant, then your production really should be limited to the use in the restaurant. If you have a separate conditional use as light industry, if you have excess at some point, the excess capacity, you can export the beer away from the site.
Do you think, for example, that who else brews down there? McNeil's has a conditional use for brewing.
Where's McNeil Brew?
Flat Street, Urban District, same area.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I just sort of.
I don't know.
So,
Well, if they considered a brew pub, then they don't need one probably. That was
Right.
That was the determination. If it's a brewery, then it's light industrial. Is that what we're?
Yeah.
Tim.
yeah.
What do you think about that big W?
So does this application include a conditional use permit then?
If you ask for it,
I would like a conditional use permit.
because then we'll treat the brewery as a light industry and give you conditional use for the light industry, or potentially give you that.
Yeah.
That's how it's written.
So
out.
then if you expand,
helpful, yeah.
if you expand that use, all you need to do is get site plan approval, not conditional use approval. And conditional use approval is generally more difficult to get.
I would like to have the W removed. I can live with the band that says Brattleboro, Vermont. But if that is, if a new owner of that building, if this building at some time were to change, the new owner is unlikely to want to have a W on the side of their building.
And
That makes it a sign. If it said Brattleboro, Vermont, then any owner of that might be very happy to keep it there. It's a decoration, a meaningful decoration. The W truly makes it a sign. And we went through this, I think, with that Renaissance on Main Street. They wanted to put an R in their panels. And we said, no, that would make the panels a sign. And so they just put in a truly decorative design in their little panels under the window. I am very, very concerned about totally undermining the sign laws in this town.
So, Spoon, if that was, because it's a W, I'm analysing what you're saying. Because it's a W and therefore it relates to Whetstone, you're not comfortable with it. If it was a V or an S, or if it was a railcar sign, i.e. something that was artistic and non-specific, you wouldn't mind it? It was truly a
The
piece of
Whetstone
art.
Station is the name of the restaurant.
Correct.
So the W stands for the name of the restaurant.
It's emblematic, or its logo for the restaurant, yeah. Perhaps that's...
And I mean, it is sophisticated to an extent. It is tastefully done. It's good colors. Everything has it to recommend for it, except that it's too big for our little downtown.
And let me again clarify, this is a rendering. It's not even, we haven't had this design in mind. It just was something that actually I think...
Hold the space.
Yeah, just
yes,
to
until
show
we
that we
start
wanted to
getting
paint a mural. Frankly, when we submitted these, we were like, oh, really, we put the mural in. Not meaning necessarily to have it, but we'd like to do something there that kind of gives the effect of a railway car. I'm not a big fan of the letter W.
If it's something
itself,
that
but
any owner could happily live with.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, if it's something that it implies our logo or is related to our restaurant, is that the concern, that it is a furtherance of our brand?
Is
or
it
is
something
it
that would work for a hair salon or...
What's the reality of a hair salon going in there, though? I mean, 'cause it's
Well,
like if you have people
I just couldn't think of
It's a fresh topic.
I think what Spoon is suggesting, and I don't know how the board feels about it, but it's that this, if it was a mural that's representative of a rail car or some other piece of art or painting that you care to put there, it's decorative, it's a decorative element, but as soon as it's got W in there, or WS or S or station or something, or your logo in any form, and then it falls under sign ordnance jurisdiction. And as such, he has raised the point about it being a W. Conceivably, you could put a Texaco star there, which one might find on a rail car, and it would work just as well, but it wouldn't have the association directly with the branding for the restaurant.
Well, let me ask you this then, and I'm not trying to split hairs at all, but if part of our actual logo, which I don't believe is on anything that you have, our logo incorporates a train coming across a bridge with the mountains in the background. That's part of our logo. Now, it is also very emblematic of that part of town and will always be associated with that building, whether we're there or not. If we were to paint a circle, smaller one, like that.
With the train coming through it?
With the train on the bridge that is part of our logo. I mean, I can show you what our logo looks like. And we were to put Brattleboro, Vermont on it without saying anything about Whetstone Station or any W's, would that be acceptable?
My criteria, it may fit, maybe I'm not articulating or seeing this quite right, but my feeling is if it could stay for the next owner, then it's not a sign.
Okay.
Well,
I would have Wolf Kahn paint it. Then it will stay. Then it will stay for the next owner.
He's a good friend of mine. I could see if I could get him to do that. That'd be fantastic.
I think it should. I think the point here is that it should not. It may or may not be your logo, or it may or may not be emblematic of your logo. It could be a ticket window, like on a train station. But it just shouldn't be. It should not be determined as a sign promoting the name Whetstone Station.
I understand that. I think we all.
Did I say
understand
that well? Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Application 2012-030, Whetstone Station Restaurant. I have a...
how do we write up that
I'll write it up.
Condition,
I will write it up, don't worry.
All right.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. 401. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with your projects. Really good luck.
Thank you. We hope to see you all down there. And thank you guys for your patience tonight.
Okay.
I wish we could accommodate you. Ryan, thank you.
I call application 2012-033. Catherine Stannard. Please come forward. Were you present at the beginning of the meeting?
No. Well, partway through the first case, yeah, partway.
Okay, I have to put you under oath. I didn't think you were here, so you're going to have to stand and say the following after me, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
We're on the record, so I hereby affirm. If you weren't here, if you've not done this already, it's not scary. I hereby affirm that the evidence I give in the cause under consideration should be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury. I do.
I do.
Thank you very much. That's the formalities of this board now. Please tell us about your application.
First of all, I have no signs. I don't care about signs at all. Let's say that.
Right.
What I am hoping to do is to build a small cottage, 4-room, 2-bedroom, single level, that would be hopefully handicap accessible for an elderly mom that I expect will need to be living here soon. I'd like to build this at a property that I own at 29 Chestnut Street. Currently is it's a little under a third of an acre, has a 2-family Victorian on it, and when I bought it in 2005, it also had a fairly large 2-story, 30 by almost 42 barn garage on it. Now that barn garage, over the winter of 2010 to 11, collapsed in one of the storms you might remember with really bad ice and snow. So the whole thing was blown apart. I finally had all of the debris removed, and what exists there currently is the concrete slab that the barn was on. So what I would like to do is to build actually a significantly smaller structure that I'm proposing 30 by 30 on a slab in the footprint of the current where the barn had been.
No illustration of this one? Or how about-
There are. In the back of the...
Get one?
It's a,
got it.
it's a
Yep.
30 by 30 single story with a porch on the front.
Yep.
Pitched roof. Based on a design called the Cherokee, I think.
Yes. Did you get the picture?
One of the issues we have with this, well, not issues, but one of the things we have to discuss is the side yard setback in the district, which is, I believe, 10 feet, and your location of this structure in relation to your boundary line. The plan, I believe, because you wish to use the footprint of the prior structure.
There's a cement slab that's right there with a little lip around it where the barn had been held up.
But that cement slab encroaches on the side yard setback?
Well,
It's
from
it-
where I measured it from, actually, I went out and measured it, and it looked like 6 feet to me. I think the town had it listed as 8 feet. And the walls that come up were about that thick, so I'm not sure exactly where it started from and went to. That's,
Do you know where the boundary line is?
I can tell where I think it is.
Yeah.
Why are we dealing with this in the thorny and
Why are we dealing-
contentious issue of defining it as an accessory structure rather than our freely given waivers to dimensional requirements when the applicant didn't pour the slab in the first place? There's a 10-foot setback. I understand there's a 10-foot setback. This is not an accessory use. Therefore, it wouldn't meet the 10-foot setback in the district, but it's silly to not use an existing slab for a smaller building. So just grant a dimensional waiver of the 4 feet and then not call it an accessory structure, call it a, I don't know, conditional use maybe?
I think that they have it listed as it doesn't need to be a conditional use because the district permits 3 and 4 dwelling units by right.
It's an accessory dwelling unit. Am I
Only if
correct?
it's a percentage of the...
It's not an accessory dwelling unit?
No, there's a specific definition that they can't be more than 1/3 of the area of the living space of the major primary structure.
And this is more than 1/3?
So are we running into that? So what about my idea to, like, let's not call it an accessory structure because clearly it's too big to be an accessory structure, but it's a second dwelling unit that is in violation of the setback, but the applicant didn't pour the concrete slab. It's not, the structure is no bigger than the barn that came down, and we give a 4-foot dimensional waiver.
We
And
can
we'll
do
see
that.
if any of the neighbors, are upset by a 4-foot dimensional waiver.
I would ask that the board ask the applicant if they would be open to using full setback before considering a waiver.
Okay.
The size, what's the size of the slab that you have there, the old slab?
It's roughly 30 by almost 42.
Which direction is the 42? The depth?
It's the length of
The length?
Yeah, property.
And then, so the slab is 30 foot wide, and as far as we know, it's 42 long and 30 wide. You wish to build a 30 by 30 structure on it, so you want to take the full footprint of the slab across the property.
And then there would be a 5-foot additional porch in the front of it.
And can you slice off 4 feet of the slab that's nearest to the property line and add 4 feet of slab on the other side and
So
just
should we, like, just move
slide
the whole
move it
thing
over
over?
4 feet?
I don't see any reason we couldn't, although certainly it would be my preference to build it right there, right where it is, so that we didn't, so that we didn't leave a 4-foot slabbed over there.
What's the condition of that slab right now? Is it any cracks? What's the integrity?
It has some cracks. It's not pristine. I mean, but it was kind of funny that I had a couple people ask me, "Oh, can we just fill it full of ice and we'll have a skating rink?"
And the size of the actual structure is 30 by what?
30 by 30.
30 by 30.
I figured that would make it the easiest for access because I'd like to have 3 foot wide for halls and for doors and stuff like that inside.
I wonder if there's any integrity problems with adding 4 feet onto one end of the slab.
Probably wouldn't be the first choice.
try to tie it in with rebar or something.
Yep.
Well, the slab is going to, if it's, assuming you have plumbing and electricity and things like that, it's slab's going to be disturbed anyway. Where you cut the plumbing in and out, or however that's done. I mean,
Sure.
you got to connect to town water and sewer.
Right.
Is the, looking at this, what we see on the maps online,
That's very distorted.
yeah, does not conform. How close is the neighbor's house? What would you think their side yard setback is?
Well, their actual house isn't near it.
It would be, how many feet
In other
would you
words,
guess?
I'm just going to take a total guesstimate off the top of my head, but it looks to me as if it's probably, 15 feet or so away from the end of their garage.
Oh.
Was that your question, Spoon? So
Well,
I think he was referring to side yard setback.
Okay.
It's probably 6 feet, like yours.
That may be.
Sorry?
Yeah, it was pretty close.
If you look at Anderson,
Yeah.
Or less.
Are you the neighbours by any chance?
Yes, they are.
Would you
Wonder
like to
why there's
speak?
somebody else here.
What? Yeah. I'm sure you're not here for the entertainment. Would you like to speak to this application?
Yeah,
Can you give me your name first?
my name's Bob Anderson,
Hi, Bob.
and we're from 28 Chestnut. Or 21.
Can you tell us what your setback is on that side?
Well, it would be about that 6 feet.
About 6 feet
Using that
also.
The old Smith.
What's your? Tell us about your. What's your thoughts about this application?
I'd rather not say because when I say I don't agree with her what she's doing, I don't think she should be using that old Smith.
But let's not deal with the technicality of the slab or the old cement. I mean, the builder may decide it's got to come out anyway. We don't know that, but we're talking about the secondary structure, or small 30 by 30. Let's call it a cottage for a second, going in the back there where the barn used to be.
Yeah, I don't have no problem. I got a question though.
Okay.
Now, she owns rental stuff there, and what she's going to build is going to be living quarters. Now, is there going to be a premium valuation put on that parcel because there's a living unit plus apartments and they're separated?
For tax purposes?
Yes.
Yeah,
valuation.
the tax assessment will undoubtedly go up pretty substantially for that property.
How's that going to impact?
Shouldn't affect you at all. You haven't had a similar improvement to your property.
I mean, I don't have a problem with what she wants to do. I mean, there's a tree that's involved, but, I have absolutely no problem with what she wants to do. The main concern I got is if there's going to be an impact on that valuation, all of that's going to impact my valuation. That's my concern.
I mean, that's a good thing to go talk to the lister about, but just because your neighbor's property is improved shouldn't mean there's any difference in the value of your property.
I don't have any problem with what she wants to do.
We have great
What
neighbors.
about one of the things we're considering is how close this development is. In fact, the fact that this development will be exactly the same on the same footprint as the previous barn that fell down 2 years ago, and that when the barn was built, There was probably no side yard setbacks. There was no restrictions as when it was built. They just built them the way they did. Now, in that area, it's required there be 10 feet from the boundary line to the property. Well,
Is that a concern for you that we would permit it to be 6 feet rather than 10 feet?
Just does what she wants to do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't concern, I'm not concerned about it. I'm concerned with the impact that that valuation is going to have on my parcel.
It's safe to say probably none.
And the same goes for the neighbor on the other side.
Because the valuations are based on comparable properties, so your house would always be compared to houses like your house, not the neighbors or anybody. It's not, houses aren't compared in price to neighbors, but to comparable houses.
And as far as that setback thing, as far as I'm concerned, we can get along with that.
okay. Thank you. Would you like to talk? Can you stand up to the microphone? Thank you.
This is Ann.
Hi, Ann.
Andrews. And where the house is going to be built, that's right next to our grandchildren's play yard, and that was where the barn was anyhow. So I mean, it's not like the house is going to be sitting like right on top of our house. It's back, and it's the end of our garage, and then there's maybe about 8 or 10 feet there, and there's some bushes there. But as far as being close, we have our line, and we know exactly where the property line is. And she's got plenty of space. Like you said, maybe 6, 7 feet. That's from her garage to where our property line, according to what the town told us when we built the addition. And where that house is going to be, that's our grandchildren's playground. It's all fenced in. I mean, it's not going to be. She may not want to have screaming grandchildren there playing, but as far as being, and if she wants to like move it back, there's room for her to move back, even if you wanted her to move back. But as far as us, I think it's great. It wouldn't be a problem to us. And we've talked about it, and we're wonderful neighbors to them, and so yeah, we didn't see any problem with her building that house.
All right, thank you.
If for some reason you can't use that slab, you'd still want to put the building in exactly the same place or not?
It would make the most sense to do it there, partly because the driveway goes right down to it. It's going to be the easiest access there. It's a fairly long, narrow lot that's very deep.
You wouldn't want to shift it 4 feet away from the property line.
As I said, I would if I had to, but I would
Prefer not.
prefer to build it right where it is.
Any other questions from members of the board? I think what we're going to do is we're going to give you, I'm going to propose that we give you a dimensional waiver, 4-foot dimensional waiver, and that'll allow you to utilise the existing slab. If there have been objections from the abutters, then we probably would have looked into it a little bit more, but at this point there isn't. I take Dr. Cho's point there that, should the slab have to be torn up and replaced or rebuilt, then I ask you just to cite it, maybe not, to minimise the amount of the dimensional waiver that we're granting you.
Great.
But at this point, we'll grant you dimensional waiver. Well, I'm proposing that we would grant you a dimensional waiver up to 4 feet.
So moved.
Great.
Is it 4 or is it
4.
The waiver is 4.
The waiver is 4.
It'll be 6 feet away.
Did I get a second?
Second.
All those in favour?
Aye.
4-0-0. There can be none against. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, here, here.
I'm surprised that Mr. Kubish has not proposed that already.
No. I'm not in a rush to get out of here.
401. I don't count myself anymore. I'm off the clock.